or?
He's virtual.
Oh, okay.
Good morning, everybody. It is Friday, July 2nd, 2021. This is a workshop meeting of the Commissioners of the City of Rehoboth Beach. I'd like to welcome everybody here and call this meeting to order at 9:01 a.m. With that, we're going to go to a Pledge of Allegiance. If you would please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll do roll call. We'll have the city secretary note that all the commissioners are present. Also up here with us, city manager Sharon Lynn. Glenn Mendalis, are you on virtually? He should be joining us shortly. Also like to recognize that Chief Keith Banks from the police department is here. Jean Lee from our, she'll be giving a presentation shortly, and Kevin Williams also, and boy, you're testing my memory. The
Public Works.
I know Evan and our intern, Madison. I'm sorry, I apologize. And Lynn Cohen, our communication specialist. So welcome. City employees dominate this audience. I'd like to welcome everybody that's watching and also those that are registered to speak. If you're coming to the meeting in person, you do not need to register to speak in advance. That's fine. You can just raise your hand like in the old days. But those registered to speak from home are Sarah and Eugene Rice. Bonnie Metz from Verizon will be here in person. Oh, Bonnie's here. Tony from Verizon remote. Joe from Verizon will be participating remotely. Suzanne from Verizon remotely. And Mike Acumi from Verizon remotely. Also, we have Sally Foreman registered to speak. So welcome, everybody. We're glad you can be here and participate remotely. We'll be calling on you at the appropriate times. With that, we'll go to correspondence, and I have no correspondence identified. From there, we'll go to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Happy to report that parking revenue for the month of June has increased approximately $50,000 compared to the month of June in 2019. So we're making comparisons to the last normal year, I'll say. So we're looking good on that front. Permit sales are also in line with prior years. Grove Park revenue, we now have a pay station in Grove Park, and that revenue to date is $3,336. We took that and the cost of what the city paid to purchase the meter, to install it, and also the software fees. So that $3,300 mark is about 40% of the cost that we paid for all of that. So we're on target to meet that and also have a little increase there. July 3rd, fireworks tomorrow. Fireworks will launch, hopefully, weather permitting, at approximately 9:30. We have road closures and exiting information available on the city's website under fireworks. Vehicular traffic in the bandstand area will be closed from 6 p.m. Through midnight, and beginning at 6 p.m., only bus traffic and residents will be permitted on Henlopen and Surf Avenues. Vehicles will not be able to cross Rehoboth Avenue at the Circle beginning at 7 p.m. Rehoboth Avenue eastbound and Church Street from State Route 1 will be closed to vehicular traffic beginning at 8:30. At that point, all vehicles entering Rehoboth Beach will have to do so via State Road to Byard Avenue. Residents on Henlopen Avenue and Henlopen Acres and North Shores must access their residences via Second Street, also beginning at 8:30. To exit Rehoboth, the city, after the fireworks, vehicles north of Rehoboth Avenue will be directed to exit via Rehoboth and Columbia Avenues. And vehicles on the south side of Rehoboth Avenue will use Byard Avenue to State Route 1 and southbound only, or Hickman or Munson Streets, also to State Road to Route 1, north and southbound. Parking for the fireworks will be available at Deauville Beach for $5 beginning at 5 p.m. Very proud, Mayor and Commissioners, of the Police Department, Chief Banks and Lieutenant Riddle, who run this operation every year. And we're looking forward to a safe and happy July 3rd fireworks display. Thank you, Chief. We do have a summer intern. Madison Matera is a local government management fellow through the University of Delaware's Master of Public Administration program. She's interning with the city this summer, working with Evan Miller, our projects coordinator. Madison received her bachelor's degree in public policy from the University of Delaware last year, and part of her undergraduate experience focused on transportation and infrastructure, workforce development, as well as homelessness and public health. We're very happy to have Madison working with us. And Madison actually just completed, and we submitted this week on behalf of the city, an application for a Sustainable Communities Grant. The grant program is funded by Delmarva Power, administered by the Delaware Nature Society, and we'll learn in September whether or not we have been accepted and hopefully receive the maximum of a $10,000 grant, which we'll use to support the Lake Gerard Inclusive Playground. And the city's planned inclusive play area at the park, as we know, includes permeable surfacing, new trees and landscaping, and a minimized footprint, which all contribute to the overarching goals of conservation, sustainability, health and wellness, and of course, social equity. More than 300 lifeguards from Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, and Virginia will compete in intense athletic events in the ocean and on the sand as part of the annual USLA Mid-Atlantic Regional Championships to be held in Rehoboth Beach next week on July 7th. The public is invited to cheer on the athletes, especially our city of Rehoboth, our hometown ones, when the competition begins at 10 a.m. The beach between Baltimore and Maryland avenues will be closed for this competition. And lastly, the GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association, established in 1984 the Distinguished Budget Presentation Awards Program. This encourages and assists state and local governments to prepare budget documents of the very highest quality that reflect both the guidelines established by the National Advisory Council on State and Local Budgeting and the GFOA's best practices on budgeting, and then to recognize individual governments that succeed in achieving that goal. Over 1,600 governments, including states and cities, counties, special districts, school districts, have been recognized for transparency in budgeting. To earn this recognition, budget documents must meet program criteria and excel as a policy document, a financial plan, an operations guide, and also a communications tool. I'm extremely proud to report that the City of Rehoboth Beach has submitted to GFOA our City of Rehoboth Beach budget document prepared by Finance Director Bert Dukes, and certainly hope to receive the Distinguished Budget Award recognition. If that is the case, we will be the only municipality in Sussex County, other than Sussex County government itself, to have achieved that award. So stay tuned. I'm really hopeful that we will receive this. So we've come a long way in 7 years. Thank you, Mayor.
Beautiful. Any questions for the city manager?
Yes.
Commissioner LeGree, go ahead.
GFOA is the top agency when it comes to the government finance offices, and to receive an award from them is really prestigious. And I think having been on the audit committee for many years, I know how well our records and our budgets are prepared. And thanks goes to Bert Dukes, and of course the city manager who whips him forward, but it's great. I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, Glenn Mendelis, are you online yet?
Mayor, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I am here. I don't have anything to report.
Nothing to report. Yes, we can hear you. Thank you, Glenn.
Thanks.
With that, we'll go to committee reports. There's a support document in the agenda for the Boardwalk and Beach Committee. Do you have anything more that you'd like to add orally?
Only that we would like to have permission to take a look at the situation with bikes on the boardwalk. We think it's getting to the point where it's a little bit dangerous. This coming meeting, we're going to talk about 5G, but in the future, we'd like to talk about that. Thank you.
Well, if you want an answer, you know, it's a volatile subject.
It's a really
It has
volatile
been in the
subject.
past. It has been discussed, and I have no problem with you talking about it. But
Okay, and we really do need the Board of Commissioners to weigh in significantly on that situation.
again, I've got very vivid memories of those discussions, and I'm sure it'll bring back nightmares, perhaps. Thank you, thank you. Any questions of the Boardwalk and Beach Committee Chair? If not, we'll move on to the next item, which is old business. If you recall, we introduced this topic at the last meeting. This is to discuss an amendment to Article 4, Garbage and Refuse Collection, Section 227-24, which is fees for residential collection of the Municipal Code, to specify yard waste and recyclables in addition to solid waste and reevaluate related fees. We'll go into that, and then related is the first item of new business, so we'll start with this first. Jean Lee presented last time, and she'll continue to present today. Welcome, Jean.
Morning. So last time I came up here, I pretty much just presented the numbers. What does it cost us to do all this? What does it cost for the new recycling? From what you guys said, I kind of took away that we wanted to make this more mandatory than optional, in that if it's optional, everybody could hand in their recycling bin and nobody does recycling because they don't want to pay for it. If it's mandatory, everybody pays the fees, everybody has a recycling bin, and they can recycle. So right now we have over 2,000 trash customers, because not everybody in the city has to do trash. Commercial don't do trash. Some large condos don't do trash to us. Only 375 of those don't have a recycling can right now. So everyone else already has a recycling can, and if we do these fees, would start paying these fees next year. We would like to combine it into one fee, not have it individual. And then that would be mandatory for all trash customers. Now it's $135 per year, and that's the average of the 6-year optional contract with Blue Hen. We have them for 3 years, we can do 6 years. Every refuse customer then would receive a recycling can. And like I said, that's about 350 cans that we would need to provide to residents. If they want more than one can, they would need to pay the additional fee, because if they take more than one, we also have to pay the additional fee to Blue Hen, because Blue Hen charges us by can, not by customer. We would continue to issue the first recycling can for free. So everybody that doesn't have one would get a new one for free. We're not going to charge them for the cans. Now, if they need a replacement, it would be $50, because there are some customers we have issues with get replacements on a regular basis, and that right now we're just giving them for free, but in the future we would charge them for the replacement cans.
Excuse me, Jean, that $50 is actually, covers the city's cost except for just a few dollars?
Yes, so the can price is just over $51 for the city to purchase.
Okay.
And that's also where the yard waste can, we'd like to change that price from them purchasing it for $35. up to 50 because it does cost the $51 for us to purchase the cans to provide. There are 21 customers right now that have recycling bins that are not trash customers. We have some commercial businesses that have like apartments above them. We've given them the recycling bin right now, but they actually use their own commercial trash because below them is a commercial business and they just throw their trash with that. So we do have those customers that we would ask the cans back from because they are not trash customers. I haven't talked to any of them, but I have a feeling they'll just roll right into whatever the recycling is that commercial business is also using, since they're using their commercial trash. One hiccup in making it mandatory is we have 3 large condo units that we couldn't go drop off 100 recycling bins at and be like, okay, now here's your mandatory recycling. All but 3 large condo units already use their own commercial trash service, like our commercial businesses do. The 3 that still are trash customers, they don't have any recycling at them right now. So they have 0 recycling bins at these 3 condos. They just put their trash out. 2 of them just put out the bags of trash. Is Mariners Court, Edgewater House, and 1 Virginia Avenue. Those 3 large condos, we would want to go to commercial trash because we couldn't provide that many cans to those condos and expect them to be compliant with them. I don't know where they would put 100 recycling bins to do this. So we would reach out to those 3 condo units and work with them on that over the next year if we do this, so they could go with their own carrier. The next part gets into billing a little bit. We talked about this last time. Right now, we bill annually. I send out the bills mid-June because I'm required to send them out by July 1st, and they're due August 31st. Seasonal trash right now is $275, full-time's $300 once a year. We want to go to, if we go the combined fee, do it quarterly. This would be part of your water and sewer bill. It would be 1 utility bill. They would not be separate bills. This would reduce the admin processing downstairs and the amount we spend on postage to send out the second billing for trash individually. So your seasonal price at quarterly would be $102.50. That's our current refuse charge plus our $135 divided into the 4 quarters. And a full-time person would pay $108.75. That's the same thing. Our $300 fee plus our $135 divided into 4. Are there any questions?
And Mayor and Commissioners, please know that Jean works with this and lives and breathes it every day. So these are staff recommendations, obviously, for discussion, and we're just trying to make things more efficient. So that's the real purpose of why we even started this. And I think some of the commissioners expressed their desire to talk about this as well. Thank you, Jean.
Thank you. The next item of business is new business, discuss proposed operational changes for solid and yard waste and for recycling services included in billings and collections. I don't know if you'd want to go on to that next before we entertain questions on the proposed.
Those all kind of tie together.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
Okay.
Would that be all right?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Just some of the operational changes that we would like to recommend for implementation. Currently, we do what I call our peak season. We do 2 times pickup per house per week. So we get north side 2 days a week, get south side 2 days a week, and then we do yard waste on that Wednesday. Our recommendation is going to be to stop the twice a week pickup at the end of October, as opposed to now it runs through the end of November. And if you look at the table at the bottom, you can kind of see our average tonnage that we do over those months. And it drops considerably between October and November. So we don't see the need to provide, twice a week pickup per house in the month of November. So that's our first recommendation. Secondly, we'd like to move our bulk pickup, 2-week bulk pickup period into the non-peak trash pickup so that we're only doing 1 day a week or 1 day per house a week at the same time we're doing the bulk pickup. Currently, as soon as we go to twice a week trash pickup per house, we're dumping the bulk pickup throughout the city as well. So it's not a very efficient use of the resources, where if we do it during the non-peak period of time, first 2 weeks of April, much easier on the staff to be able to get those things done in an efficient manner. Next recommendation is that we would go to a city can for our trash. Right now, we get a hodgepodge of whatever anybody goes and buys. We get the bags, loose bags on the ground that birds get to, the deer get to, and everybody else. So we would recommend going to a standardized city can. Also allows us to use the tipper feature on the back of our trash trucks instead of our, many of our sanitation guys are not, spring chickens, so they're trying to lift 30, 40, 50-pound cans full of trash, whereas the trucks all have the tipper feature on there. This would allow us to standardize that, use the tipper feature. And finally, it looks better, right? You have all these nice city cans out there as opposed to the hodgepodge. So that's our recommendations on the residential trash. For yard waste and loose leaves, our first recommendation, similar to the trash, well, the first recommendation is to eliminate the first, third, and fifth Wednesdays of the month. It just confuses our residents. It confuses our staff as to what month has 5 Wednesdays in it, and just go to an every other Wednesday feature. It's much more easy for the residents and the staff to understand the days they're going to go out and do the yard waste. Secondly, we would like to change the start date for that, because if you look at the table below, you can kind of see the tonnage that we do with respect to yard waste in the months, and you can see that it really doesn't start until November. So we would say, don't start circling the city picking up leaves in October. We can do that in November when the demand is there. It's just not there in October. With respect to the schedule, right now we put the leaf vacs out every day of the week, right? So they're wandering, cruising the city looking for leaves, because it's broken out into about a 4 or 5 street per day. So you have to mobilize the crew, you get them out, they wander around those streets looking for it. We would like to mass like we do with regular trash. So we would like to do the north side on a day, and we would like to do the south side on a day. It aligns better with our typical trash cycle. So if you're on the north, you get Tuesday, Friday. If you're on the south, you get Monday, Thursday, whatever. But we still have the ability to get all those leaves up. It's on a standardized day, and just makes it a little more efficient for our staff, as well as more of a regular thing for the residents as well. You're going to get it on a certain day, and we can mass on it and get them all picked up. And then finally, I don't know if it's a recommendation, it's just something I think we're going to do, is we're going to put a yard waste dumpster down at the recycle yard. So for our energetic residents that want to pick up their own leaves and deposit them somewhere, they don't want them sitting out for the week waiting for us to come get them, then they can take them down and deposit them down at the recycle yard. We have our guy there already checking, make sure it's just residents using it, and he's also checking to make sure they're not dumping things in there that they shouldn't. So those are our operational changes that we're recommending you take a look at as well.
So I suggest that commissioners perhaps start off with any questions or comments on the operational changes, and then we'll go backwards to the fee schedule. Anybody have any comments?
I have a comment on blue and yellow, but I can wait until we get to that point.
I have just a question with regards to the loose leaf and the pickup. Would you run 2 crews a day if you got trash and leaf pickup?
Only in May, because we didn't recommend curtailing that period. But normally, we're only going to have 1 day per week. So Monday, Tuesday, they're doing regular trash.
Right.
Thursday, Friday, we're going to do leaves. So much more efficient, I think, use of the staff, as opposed to trying to do leaves at the same time you're doing regular trash.
So Tuesday would be trash and Friday for leaves for north side, and Monday.
Correct. I think that's the layout now for trash, right? Tuesday, Friday, north, and Monday, Thursday, south. We'd probably keep that same rotation. Just in the off season, the leave season, you would do, you know,
Leaves only or something?
Thursday would be south, Friday would be north.
Yeah, Gene and Kevin, thank you for the detailed report. It's very helpful. Kevin, what kind of numbers are using the recycle yard? Is that getting used on the?
It really hasn't changed much. I know we reported on it, I think, a year or so ago. The numbers are not a lot, but it does get used. We usually have drops, you know, and it may be in the range. I'm trying to recall, so don't hold me to the numbers. It was in the high single, low double-digit numbers on the days that they were open.
Thank you.
I have some question about the city-supplied cans and making it mandatory that people use a city-supplied can. I talked to a few people about this. First of all, not everyone wants to have the large can. In fact, I've had several people tell me that because of the size of the area where they store it at the recycle bin is too large too. And I realize that only comes in one size. But the trash cans, we have a smaller one as well. It doesn't have a tipping mechanism, and I'd be happy to buy one that does. But I think that we will get some pushback from people on that potentially. But the other thing is that the rules that were put into place in 2016 requiring, you know, specific hours to put out trash to, you know, try to clean up the streets, there was a big controversy over that. And frankly, I think it has cleaned up the streets a lot. But some of these changes will affect that. For instance, bags are allowed to be put out in the morning. So if someone is leaving and they don't have the option to take their can back behind their house because they're going out of town, they have the option to leave a bag, you know, on Monday morning or Tuesday morning when they leave. My understanding is it's supposed to be, you know, a heavy-duty bag, so not one that the animals can get into. Are you saying people are using small bags, and so we have the problem anyway, despite that rule?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, they're using their tall kitchen bags, right? The white tall kitchen bags.
Right.
So anyway,
Okay. So, but nevertheless, this means that a significant number of people will not be able to comply if they must use a can. The rule is that the cans cannot stay out past, 6 p.m. or something. So they will not be able to comply with the rules. So what do we do with them?
Well, I think we offer the valet service, so they could pay us to actually put the cans back. There's also a third-party service that does trash positioning and repositioning. And I think, if I recall, you know, they're not allowed to put it out till the morning anyway. So if you're leaving Monday morning, it would just, whether it's a white bag or a city can, they still have to have a mechanism to get it out there. The take it back, again, if it's a bag, you just leave and don't worry about it because it goes away.
Right.
The return would be an issue. So.
Right, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah,
It
correct. So,
it creates the need for them to buy the service. And interesting, when the city valet service was started, I thought it was done sort of as an experiment, but that's been continued every year.
That's correct.
And is there a maximum number you can take, or have you reached your maximum number or anything?
No, I think when it first started, it was a little over 50 to
50,
60,
yeah.
and
Remember that.
Gene knows the numbers.
So we have going into July 1st of this year, because people add and take away the end of June. So as of yesterday, we have 52 valet customers. It went up a little over 100, and then a lot of people, I believe, left having talked to them because we only offer it for trash. So they use the third-party person because they do yard waste, recycling, trash, more than what we just do. But we only have just over 50 right now that use our service.
That's fine. But in any case, that's going to create an extra cost for those people because they're going to have to put it. And I guess the one thing I wonder, too, again, we put those rules in place about 5 years ago. Are they being enforced? Because I got to tell you, I see stuff out all the time.
Yeah, so they are enforced when we're able to do that, and we had a very good track record with our code compliance officer who resigned earlier this year, and as you know, we're having staffing problems and some medical issues, so we're going to get that back on track as soon as we're up to full staff.
And have you found that most people have adjusted their way of thinking and their plans to comply?
I think a lot of people have, certainly not everybody. You know, we remind people, Jean, you know, fields these phone calls, and she can tell you the frustration that, you know, she and the department has. But I think on the, you know, general generally, many people comply. Certainly not
And
everyone.
overall, it looks a lot cleaner to me. I mean, so I would not want to see us change that because of the logistical problems that we may be creating, but at the same time, I do get questions sometimes about enforcement, and I just want to, be able to know what to say to them. Because most people don't have any problem following the rules, but they want to make sure that, they're not the only ones. There were a few issues back then that we really never addressed. One was about sort of equitable service, the fact that everybody pays the same, depending on whether you rent or don't rent. The difference between seasonal and full year is,
Are you segueing into the fee section
well,
versus
both, actually.
the
Yeah,
operational changes?
So I'll save that one. But so the other one, and this has come up just very recently, is the issue of screening. What we would require, because I guess commercial is required to screen, but we never required residential to screen. And as you know, City Manager, that has been a huge headache in one area of town just recently. So I guess I feel like if we're talking about all these operational issues, we ought to look at the rule, the ordinance as a whole or the rules as a whole and clean up, no pun intended, where we need to.
Commissioner Gay, screening, as you know, is a current topic in some neighborhoods, and I think that's a separate topic we'll put on an agenda for discussion. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine, but I would just comment that by changing this up a bit and having every resident purchase a city can, that would clean some of those issues up. Because you couldn't put out every container that you have on a.
So other containers would not be allowed.
Correct.
So if I put out my older container by mistake, it would just sit there. They wouldn't even pick it up.
We go out, we bend
Okay.
over backwards every day. So until people get used to it,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. I do think there's going to be some, because I don't know, what size container? What is the size of the container that the city
I'm
supplies?
not sure what the gallon capacity is on
It's
that.
usually like 65 or something.
I don't know that they're that
Or
large.
90.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people use small ones, that's all I'm saying. And I think there will be some pushback there. The other thing, I guess I'm just end with a question, is the operational changes seem very logical. Does that result in a savings overall in efficiency?
Certainly does in the efficiency of the use of the staff. So they can then be doing other things. I don't know that it would, efficiency in staff reductions. I don't think we would look to that.
Oh, no,
but I
I was-
think just the efficiency of what they're doing on a daily basis.
I just didn't know if it would
They come
lower
off of
the
that
cost
task.
of the operation overall.
It certainly would on the leafs, because right now we send that leaf tractor and that leaf machine out and it's cruising the street all day, every day, trying to find leaves, right? Where if we consolidate it on a 2-day basis, you're saving 3 days for sure, just
Okay,
on equipment and gas, yeah.
I have a question. It's on recycling. Do we still have 2 different sizes of recycling bins, or just the one?
People that have the small cans still have them, but we do not issue any of the small cans anymore. We just issue the large ones.
And so the recycling company, do they have the tipping feature?
They do.
They do. They actually don't even have to get out of their truck to empty your cans. They have it goes out, grabs it, dumps it, puts it back down. They typically don't even get out.
Okay, so I'm assuming then that the company can tip the larger cans and the smaller cans.
Yes.
So to address Commissioner Gay's question, is there a possibility that you could have 2 size trash cans?
So our tip feature on the back is a platform it rolls onto and lifts up. I'm very confident it would do various size cans. There's like a medium size and a large size. The ones that the Blue Hand uses, it's a scissors or a pliers kind of thing that just grips it from the outside. So just a little different. But I think our platform would handle at least 2 sizes of cans.
I think it would be good if you could offer more than one size, because I think that there are some older folks who have a hard time with the bigger cans. I mean, I know I pull some things out for my neighbors, and so, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Kevin, how do you propose issuing these cans? Have you looked at the cost? Are you proposing that the city would pick up the initial cost? And of providing these cans to residents?
So we've done a kind of a cursory review about how we would go about it. Obviously, if we made it mandatory, now we're gonna have 3,000 or 2,800, whatever the number is, city cans all at one time. You know, they come in pieces, you have to assemble them. I haven't really kind of settled on whether we do it all at once or we do north one year, south one year. I haven't really kind of worked through the logistics of that. The cost, that'll go back to Gene. Do you add that in? It's $150,000 to outfit everybody with a city can. Whether you build that into the rate structure, you know, or whether we just bite the bullet. And I mean, the resident's going to pay one way or the other, whether the city pays or they pay for it. How we decide to do that, it's I guess up to us. Yeah.
Thank you.
But yeah, about $150K and the issuing of them and registering them so that we know who has what cans. We haven't worked through all those logistics yet.
Question on this. You'd mentioned about the valet service that we only offered for trash now. Would we have the capability of expanding that valet service to include yard waste and recycling bins?
So recycling is a no. Blue Hen will not do a valet service. So we could not offer that to them. Yard waste, could we do a valet yard waste?
Oh, sure we could. Yeah,
Come up with
I
a,
would think we could.
yeah.
Sorry?
I would think we could.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, we just have to.
But recycling would be a no, because it's
Recycling would be a
contracted.
no because that's contracted to Blue Hen.
And then one other element that I don't see here, and I know it may be a little far in advance here, but what type of communication plan or education plan are we going to put into place to, if we move through this, how do we let our residents know what we've decided and effectively implement it and then monitor it on the end to see if it really works?
So my first suggestion is to put it on their water bills because they get those quarterly and, you know, they got to open those up and read those to pay them. So we can put anything we want on comments on a water bill. So we would do that for sure. This year's trash billing's already gone, so we couldn't add it to that. Plus, we can add flyers in with our billings to let them know whatever decisions we do decide that this would go into effect. So, I mean, if we can make a decision 6 months out, that gives us 2 water billings to notify them, plus the website. Now, any special circumstances like these condos and that, I would personally reach out to them, talk to them about this, and make sure everybody, you know, because there's not that many of them, we could work that through.
So those 3 large condo units, is there an opportunity to deal with them as a separate unit, or what are your plans of offering them or how to manage that particular subject?
So I would alter the commercial letter that we had a while back that said they needed to get a commercial provider. And I would talk to them as well. If they have it 6 months to find a commercial provider, there's already other commercial providers in the city picking up all our other those are the only 3 large condo units that we actually deal with at all. And along with issuing the trash can as well as the recycling can, we could not do that with those 3. So they need dumpsters if they're gonna do something like that. Because right now, 2 of them, like I said, just put bags out. Every condo unit just puts bags out. They don't have any kind of dumpster or trash cans, so.
And any estimate of what type of current revenue stream we receive from those 3?
Yep, so, let me find, oh, I did not bring that page up here. It's just over $54,000 that they pay in trash right now that we would no longer receive.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm supportive of several things. I have a little pause on a couple things. I need to do some more thinking, but I'd just like to offer some notes. And starting with the standardized use of a city can, I have a brand new 45-gallon trash can that's tipping or lift mechanism compatible. So I'm ready to go. Now all of a sudden I'm going to have to buy a new one, and I'm not sure I would want to put that burden on everybody else. The aesthetics point of view, that's a good one because, you know, the yard waste cans are all similar and out there, and the recycle bins are all out there. And I'm very proud because I helped design the stickers on the yard waste, actually yard waste and recycling. And it's kind of, for me, it's neat to walk down the street and you see the blue can, blue can, blue can, blue can, and on the side it says Rehoboth Beach Recycles. Rehoboth Beach Recycles. So I like that. I like that continuity and the aesthetic of that. You know, again, whether I want to go as far as force everybody to have new cans, if we can say your cans must be lift mechanism compatible, then maybe that's the way to go. You know, in terms of the sizes, again, we have a 45 gallon. You know, 45 gallons is about the maximum size that my wife can take out to the curb. I would have to take them all out if we went to 65 or 95 gallon containers. And, but, you know, when we first started with recycling, DSWA, Delaware Solid Waste Authority, is the one that gave us all the bins at the beginning. And if you recall, they were small rectangle bin boxes almost, maybe 5 gallon. And then they had a 30 gallon and a 65 gallon and a 95 gallon. I liked all those sizes to be able to offer them. But over the years, I also recognize it's quite a burden for the city to try to keep all those in stock and keep track of them. I would, however, like, as Commissioner Calusi said, for them to consider going back to multiple sizes, because we've got residents, elderly residents that not only can only handle the small bins, but they only put in so many, you know, very, very little volume into the bins. The bulk pickup would be a month earlier. I know a lot of the bulk pickup is for snowbirds, perhaps, to come back up north and start cleaning out their properties and everything. So I think they liked the previous period, but I can also understand the efficiencies of going that route. The yard waste pickup on the first, third, and fifth of the month has always been so easy to remember. First, third, fifth, first, third, fifth. But when Sharon and I dealt with Blue Hen and we ended up changing recycling to every other week in the off season versus first, third, and when we were doing it, we were having trouble there too. You know, it forced us to use a calendar and put it out, and that works fine. If we can get people to print out that calendar and stick it on the side of their refrigerator so that they know, because that's the only way to know what day your pickup day is. And I'll keep repeating it. The current decals on our containers will need to be changed. We're going to have to bite the bullet, whether we pick them up and swap them out or stick a decal over them. We need to be able to tell people what the correct collection schedule is. For loose leaf pickup, I always thought that maybe the volume was such that it needed to have 5-day-a-week pickup, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the north and 5 in the south. But if we can do it in one day, and I know that in the North Pines, there are some huge, you know, they might spend 2/3 of the day in the north and only 1/3 in the south. But if we can make that work, I'm all for that. Just FYI, the current recycling yard pickup over there, for years and years and years, I've wanted to expand it to batteries pickups. And so I talked with the Delaware Solid Waste Authority liaison recently, and he indicated that batteries, they sound so simple. It's just a little box this big, but it's considered hazardous waste. So it's actually monitored and taken care of by Department of Natural Resources. And because it's hazardous waste, they're a little protective of who gets them and how frequent they're going to be filled and emptied, and because they want them emptied frequently. I thought that our location would be great because maybe it wouldn't be, they wouldn't need to come here but every 2 months or 3 months. But they don't like that because it's hazardous waste, they want it. So that was not going to happen anytime soon. And as far as the valet and recyclables, technically we could do it, I think, because it's really, the valet service is just putting out the cans. It's not collecting it. But because we have a vendor that we can't necessarily control, I think it makes it more challenging to put it out there at a time guaranteed before they show up on your street to do it. So maybe it's not such a good, I think. So those are just some of my thoughts. We're going to go to the public shortly. Does anybody else have any comments?
I have one
Yes,
other,
sir.
question, or Jay. This year, for the bulk pickup, we used an outside contractor and did it 1 week, full steam. Has there been consideration to repeat that, or was that efficient and effective, or has that been looked at as part of the solution?
That's always a solution, Commissioner. We wanted to get it back in-house, and we felt if we did it during that kind of off-season period, we could do it in-house. This year was exacerbated, obviously, by the staff shortages that we had, so we really had no option other than to go outside to contract that service.
I understand that, but as we've all learned through COVID, doing things differently, maybe we should continue that and it's given us a chance to experiment with it, if you will. So I'm just curious, as that was an option looked at as opposed to keeping it in-house?
Not specifically.
If there's no more commissioner questions at this
Here
time.
you go. City manager, do we have one or more outside vendors? How many valet vendors are we dealing with?
One that I'm aware
One
of.
third party. We have one third-party person that does valet service
Okay.
that's licensed in the city.
I've had numbers of conversations with him, and the bane of his existence are the bags. And his customers evidently are putting the trash cans out, and then they're putting bags around the trash cans or something similar to that. He says he spends half his time picking up bags that have been there all night long. Now, I don't know how valid those comments are, but I live in a neighborhood that has a number of big rental houses, and they fill up their blue and yellow cans early. They set them out on Thursday, and then they'll put bags all around for other stuff. 3 or 4 uncrumpled boxes just about fills up that blue and yellow can halfway, and then you fill the top of it with cans and bottles, and your blue and yellow's filled. Yesterday, we had a real good, hard rainstorm with wind, and I spent at least 20 minutes picking up bags of bottles, and those plastic bottles just go like crazy, picking up bottles and bags that had been set around rental house blue and yellow cans. And I think that's a definite problem, and I'm assuming it happens because during the rental season, they need more than one blue and yellow, and they're reluctant to buy another blue and yellow. I think it's something we need to talk about. In addition to that, we've talked last time about whether or not the Blue Hand contract was with one driver on the truck, or whether there was another person on the truck who could come around and pick up those bags and stuff that sits around the blue and yellow cans. And the mayor said that he felt like there was not going to be an automatic loader, but Gina believes that there is going to be an automatic loader. We need to solve that, because I've checked around with the drivers, who are 2 drivers, one of them tipping the can, the other guy picking up all kinds of stuff, and I have photos that I've shared with the mayor and the public works director, and that's a problem that needs to be solved, because once they come with automatic tippers, if in fact Gina's correct, we'll have another problem on our hands. We need to talk about that. My last, and let me have one more, Dick, and then I'm done.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on this last one, but I'll jump in a minute.
Jump in when I'm going to ask one more question of Gina. Is there any problem with doing this additional billing with direct debit customers?
No. So if you have ACH through the city,
Mm-hmm.
it's already set up for both trash and water.
Okay.
If we change to the quarterly billing, trash just becomes one bill with water, sewer, and trash all on it.
Okay.
Actually, the way our computer system was originally set up, we had to customize it to break it apart. Putting it back together would be very easy.
Thanks. That's the end of my questioning.
I just want to make one comment on the tipper trucks. So every Friday I get emails from Blue Hen with pictures where the driver had to get out of the truck. Why does the driver have to get out of the truck? Our drivers aren't supposed to get out of the truck. So they may be doing it, but it's not what they actually want to be doing, and they're not happy that they get out of the truck. So
And yes, I agree with you. And my question is, how long are they going to be doing this? And my second question is, many of these things that surround the can are not recyclable. They're bags, there are plastic objects that, boogie boards, you name it. And those folks are not going to be taking that with them because it contaminates their load. And once they go to a single driver, we can't contaminate, which is what we're doing now. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, I was just going to comment. and
Commissioner
Gene-
Byrne, go ahead.
Gene is correct. I mean, they're already using a single driver and a tipper truck in some cases. I mean, that's what comes by my place.
A single,
Yes.
double
And
guys come by my house. I have
I
photographs.
know they're operating both kinds of trucks, but invariably, every Friday, I have the tipper truck. And, my neighbors and I have learned to push those way out so the tipper truck can grab them and the driver doesn't have to get out.
And they got to be set straight and everything. And there are pictures on their website how to do it.
So far, my observation is, the driver, whether it's reluctant or not, is getting out and having to do that. Now, that slows the process down, it's inefficient. But my other observation is that there's not been much education to the residents about, what is expected and what would make that pickup much more efficient for that single driver. And so if there was something in the mail, if there was a flyer that was left on the top of the can in some way that wouldn't blow away, to help people become better at putting that recycling bin out so a tipper truck can grab it, the driver can stay behind the wheel and just operate that tipper mechanism. Because this is clearly the future, and I suspect all the trucks are going to that.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just wanted to get, before we get to the public, mention one thing that Commissioner Gay brought up earlier, and that is that I was very, very pleased to work on the original trash amendments there and allowed for bags of trash to be put out early in the morning for that exact reason that Commissioner Gay said, that people that want to leave town can put them out and then they don't have to worry about putting the trash can. So I hate to get rid of that option. So did you have something else?
The only other thing I was going to say is you raised an interesting point about the snowbird schedule and whether or not people would be back in time for the bulk pickup in early April. And I do think there are a number of operational issues here that are going to affect people's lives, and I think it'd be useful to get feedback. And I don't think we've used our survey mechanism in a while. And so maybe not this week, but ultimately when we can formulate some plans, I think we need to go to the public other than just at meetings and try to get some good feedback on some of these changes. And see.
Speaking of feedback, let's go to the members of the public. We'll go through the list real quick. You can talk on operational changes. You can also talk on the fee schedule if you want, even though we haven't gotten back to that. Carol Everhart, anything on trash? You're not talking trash with us this morning. Walter?
Walter Birmingham, 123 Open Avenue. I think all of this has been excellent discussion. I think the diverseness of our community causes problems here. On Hennepin Avenue in the first block, there has been a pile of trash. The yellow top can sticks out. With the storm and everything the past couple of days, but the tenants, the renters come in, they pick up nothing. They don't worry about what falls out. Public Works is strained. You're doing a good job hiring extra people there, the city manager. Public Works really needs extra help, just like the police department, unusual times. But whatever you can do, extra crews going out from Public Works, which currently don't exist, or have someone from one of the agencies outside come in on an extra day is better because the city does not have the resources to do it. There is an OSHA problem. When you have a grabber truck, you can't even get the people different places if they have the same day. People don't understand, they don't care why. You have to set the cans apart so the grabber can go around it. And one of the problems that you run into, it for everybody in the room to understand, is when you have that mechanism and that man's sitting there, he can totally control that operation. But when you have another person that's out around it, you have a real liability situation, and then all the people that don't care. I encourage you to spend the money to make it work. I don't like this, but somebody extra to go out and help with it. Kevin, Chief, you see what's happening. And spend the money to try items, even if you do it on one side of town. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Sarah and Eugene Rice. We'll come back to them if they need. Sally Foreman, you're not on this topic, all righty. With that, let's revert back to the first item of old business, which is talking about fees for yard waste and other waste products.
Can I go ahead? First of all, Gene, thank you very much for all this.
Let me say something that I'm not intending to put this on the, it may be on the agenda for the July regular meeting if we want a discussion, but likely I would continue discussion at August workshop. So my point is I'm not rushing this to a vote. This is very important.
Well, that's good, because I think there's some sort of overall kind of global issues here. I also think it's tied into things that aren't directly related to trash that we probably ought to look at the same time. And I suspect it was my, question at the first meeting about, being a disincentive, the price that caused you all to look at the mandatory, and I think we even talked about it a little bit then, and I have very mixed feelings about that. But just by way of background, first of all, I'll tell you, I really honestly didn't know for many of the years I was here that we didn't already pay for it in some fashion. In other words, as I said at the last meeting, I thought we paid a blended fee. I didn't realize it was a benefit provided by the city and has been, now I know, since 2007. And so I think a lot of people don't know that. And I think it's interesting to sort of look at how we got here. Today's presentation, you didn't have the same data from the first time, so I just want to review a couple of things where we are. The cost for the new Blue Hen contract ranges from $216,000 to $264,000 over the course of the contract. And that's up from about $112,000 that we're paying now, right, for recycling.
So it's from 216 to 263, and our current year, or last year, we paid them
At about $112,000.
It was right around that. I don't.
So it's the
Oh,
big,
it was $112,283 we paid.
so I'm assuming the increase is part of what's driving this. And I went back to see when we started the program here, and I really think we were ahead of the curve and something to be very proud of. But the resolution was adopted in February 2007. And it basically said that whereas the Delaware Solid Waste Authority has developed a functioning residential curbside program, the commissioners find this highly desirable, and therefore they direct the city manager to enter a contract to provide this service to customers in the city, to work out all the details, to notify citizens, and to include the net cost in the city's annual budget, beginning April 2007, so 14 years ago. So I guess my first question is, has our goal changed? Are we saying we no longer want to provide it as a benefit to property owners, but instead we want to turn it into a tax? Because it'll be an obligation, by being required, by being an obligation, and also by not being usage-based, like water and sewer are, because there's no way for anybody to affect their bill, it is essentially a tax. And I liked what Kevin said during in answer to one of the questions. He said, well, people are going to be paying for it one way or another. But now they're going to be paying twice, because I don't think we're lowering their property tax in order to collect this fee, right? So it's almost, so they're sort of paying it now through their taxes, but they're going to be paying it directly going forward. And I guess, I know that one of the things we talked about, and Commissioner LeGree was very keen on it, being an enterprise fund, as am I. I think it's great to be able to know what your expenses are and what the revenue is that support those expenses and where that revenue comes from. So I think creating an enterprise fund is a great idea, but I also don't understand why the city can't contribute to the enterprise fund such that if the costs, having trouble talking this morning. If the overall cost, and I'm trying to remember from your first presentation, goes to about a little over $1 million, I think, it's 800,000 now, goes to a little over $1 million, that if we put in, 200,000 of that, why wouldn't we consider doing that? I mean, we put in 300,000 for the dock. We're now collecting recycling and trash outside the city, and our taxpayers are paying for that. The only benefit left after this will be the parking passes. And I think people are going to be sorry to lose a benefit, and they're going to ask questions about what our priorities are and why we're taking a benefit away from them, and especially when we seem to have had some windfalls financially recently with the sale of 84 Kent and with the money coming in from the government. And, I just question the timing of it and the message it sends and what our goals are. Throw that out there.
Could I speak?
Yes, sir. Commissioner LeGree.
We have incredible unfunded needs for infrastructure. Our unfunded need for stormwater management is probably in the millions, several million. And I'm sure that the Public Works Director could tell us exactly what that is. Now, that's a service that is provided by nobody, but we have great expenses on there, and we should have an enterprise fund, just so we know where that money's coming from and where it's going. Now, we have been taking that out of our hide for the last years, and there comes a time when you just can't continue to take it out of your hide, and I think that Commissioner Gay has hit on that with the trash. Thank you, Mayor.
I'm glad you brought up the stormwater utility. I was going to talk about that because we know that's coming, right? We know we're going to be doing having some sort of utility, and I think we need it. I absolutely agree with you. We need it, and the good thing, but at the same time, that's going to require an education effort for homeowners because they're going to see that as another tax. But it's absolutely needed. The difference there is that does become an incentive. It's an incentive to have green space. It's an incentive to have pervious surfaces so that you can lower the fee, because my understanding is that's how the fees are arranged. So that's more of a usage base and something people can control. And I guess I feel like that's the other reason that I think the timing of this is concerning to me, is that we just had the big increases in water and sewer. We know at some point, hopefully, I guess even next year, we're going to have to put in the stormwater utility fee. And this is just piling on and taking away a benefit that the city has given them all these years. Yeah, that's all.
Well, it just comes to how much hide we can give out. There comes a time when we just can't keep ignoring these infrastructure problems. And so we have to take funds from our city to spend that. And the city manager prepares a budget each year, and those capital improvement projects are included, and they come to millions. And I would like to see us double the amount we spend on streets.
I would too. That's where the priorities come in. Is really to look at everything.
Maybe people could help us. Maybe we could hear from the voters what they'd like to have happen.
I'd love to, because the other part of this too is the equitability. And you mentioned the rental houses and all the trash and we've never really solved the problem. That right now, by having a structure and it's only a $25 difference, and it doesn't take into account rental, it's just the difference between seasonal and non-seasonal, and now the recycling fee would be a flat fee no matter what. Frankly, I think we need more tiers of service, maybe more options than just seasonal. And I understand that creates operational issues, and I don't really want to get into details today. I know that may create headaches, but at the same time, I've seen how many different kind of rental contracts there are. So if there's like 7 or 8 different kinds of rental categories, we'd think we'd create some categories here and be able to tie the requirements, because that's what we're going for here is a requirements, to heavy users, so that people with a rental license and over 5 bedrooms, I'm making this up, or something, would be required to have more than one barrel, so that Jay doesn't have to go out and pick up their trash.
And I'm sure there'll be pushback when we ask those folks to have two cans that
Right.
that Blue End's going to charge another $108, or whatever they charge a year to pick them up.
Any other commissioner comment? Commissioner Byrne?
Yeah, a couple of comments. You know, I think that the data that we've been given, one, it's very helpful, and thanks for your good hard work on it. You know, $435 annually to pick up all of this year-round, I think is a bargain. And I think that is a way to look at it, that it's an incredible service. And if you break it down week by week throughout the year, it's a real bargain. And I'm not sure that other communities are doing it as efficiently and as cost-effectively as we are. I don't know that for a fact. I just think that this is a very good price. And then to break it out so that people can pay for it 1/4 at a time, I think is very helpful to people as well. And I'm assuming that the invoice that we all as home owners receive, whether it's via email or paper mail, will delineate each of these items, water, sewer, like it's already done, and then
Correct, it's still a little.
and then the refuse and the recycling. So people will be very clear what they're paying for in that quarterly bill. I also think, you know, in this day and age, people either expect or should expect that we're paying for recycling. And if it means that we have to do more education and help people understand, you know, what should go into recycling, what shouldn't, then I think that the burden's on us to do that and to help people get motivated, excited for all the right reasons environmentally to be doing recycling, and help people look at the bigger picture. Because you know, we all pay for schools. I haven't had children in schools for years and years, but I pay, you know, some amount in my Sussex County taxes. I'm happy to do that because good schools are critical for the future of our community. Supporting our environment, supporting an eco-friendly city is important to our future, whether I throw much into my recycling or I kind of ignore it. And so I think there's a mentality here that I think we can give a very positive spin to for people to engage in this activity. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. If there's no one else, we'll go to the public specifically on the topic of refuse, yard waste, and recycling fees. Anybody? Let's see, Carol, Walter, anything else? Sarah and Eugene Rice. And Sally, you're for later. Very good. Thank you. With that, we really have no direction or path forward on this. I'm going to put it on the August workshop agenda for continued discussion. I would certainly hope everybody gives all this thought so that we can determine a path forward when we meet again on this in August. Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
And Mayor, I think we were, in order to educate the public and to get the word out, we were anticipating some decision, whatever the commissioners decide, by November. Is that correct, Jane?
Yes, because with the billing as well, we will have to change that form. So there is a little leeway we need before the next charge billing.
So we have plenty of time. I just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Gina, thanks for a great presentation.
With that, we'll go to the next item of new business, which is a status report from city manager or Kevin on resolving issues amongst the city, Rehoboth Beach Museum, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in regard to the recently discovered permitting, lease, and contract documents at the Grove Park Canal Dock. Chairman?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Unfortunately, we sent some information over to the Army Corps. They have agreed to slightly amend the agreement. In preparing that has been you know, it's time consuming, I assume, for the Army Corps. We haven't received a draft of that language. They have agreed to it. They assured us of that, but we have not yet received a draft. I can tell you that this past week, the Historical Society Board did approve transferring the lease that the Historical Society has with the Army Corps from the Historical Society to the city. So that's been approved. We did educate them about, you know, what the issues are here. So we're just waiting for the Army Corps. Again, they were positive about it, but for whatever reason, maybe it was July 4th, I don't know, but they've been lax in getting that draft amendment language to us. So I know the Director of Public Works is, you know, in touch with them on a daily basis, and we'll get it as soon as we can to you.
Very good. Any questions?
And
Is that holding up the use of the dock?
I think that, no, the dock is in use. You know, there are private folks using the dock. And as far as the contracted intentions that the city has, that would be the only thing that is held up a bit. But there are events planned.
But we have no commercial use of the dock yet until we get that agreement from the Corps. Is that correct?
As far as I know, correct.
Thank you.
Just to be clear here, are there two elements involved here? There's the transfer of the lease from the Historical Society to the city, correct?
Yes.
Is one aspect. But
Yes.
is there not also an aspect of fees collected on a public dock?
Yes,
So there are two issues that we're still dealing with.
yes.
And the one that is Army Corps still responding to is both of them, or which one?
Well, Mr. Mandelis, if you're listening, if you can comment on the fees, that would be helpful.
Sure. So the fees, there was an issue in the, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. There was an issue with the fees on the contract because there was a question about how those fees could be used. We've spoken with the Army Corps. My understanding is that once the lease is assigned to the city, we will be able to engage in the commercial operation and collect the fees and use them in the general fund, is the way I understand it right now.
Oh, okay.
So that issue is largely resolved, Commissioner Gossett.
And that will be, if you will, how is that resolved? As part of the lease, or will it be a separate document, contract with the city between the Army Corps, agreement, or just I would like, once this is done, I would just like to see how that is memorialized or stated. That's all.
Understood. It's part of the lease, though. It will not be a separate document.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So Sharon, I guess, or Glenn, I mean, assigning the lease should be a very simple, easy thing to do.
It should be.
So what
government's
part of
involved.
that is the Army Corps of Engineers involved in?
The
As a leaseor.
They're the ones that they are the ones, I believe, that are initiating. Well, Kevin, let's let Kevin.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. Currently, the lease is between the Army Corps of Engineers, who kind of owns that property as part of the operational project, with the Historical Society. So we can't, that contract does not allow them to just transfer the lease to us. It has to go back to the Corps. The Corps will then issue a supplemental agreement to that lease, transferring it to us. So it's not as simple as just having the Historical Society switch something to us or switch
So
something.
they don't have the ability to assign.
Correct, that's correct.
Okay.
And recently, the board of the Historical Society voted to allow reassignment to the city of Rehoboth Beach. So that's all in action. I tell you, I assure you that We're trying to resolve this as expeditious as possible. We even started the conversation with the Army Corps before we announced the problems at the last meeting. So we are very attentive to this.
And I would just say, it pains me to no end to be here saying we haven't gotten it yet, having worked for that organization for 30 years of my life, right? When they promised me we'd have it last week or this week, and we don't. So I mean, I'm embarrassed, but professionally embarrassed to say we don't have it yet, but we don't have it yet.
I'm just anxious to, I want to take a water taxi to Lewis for dinner. I'm
Absolutely.
anxious. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any members of the public? Carol, Walter?
Walter Birmingham, 123 Hennepin Avenue. I appreciate your efforts to try to straighten this out and trying to be positive to my knowledge, and I consider myself fairly informed. I never heard of the fact that the kayak slide and everything, or whatever you want to call it, didn't get built, but that's life. But I don't know, and I read the requests for proposals, and we don't know what Kevin and the city manager proposed to go out on contracts. But if you're talking about looking for funding and building a kayak slide, you already had some extra expenses for the fence and stuff like that. I'm not worried about it. It is a very nice facility. But it looks to me like if you're proposing to do the rest of these changes, what did the people bid on? Are they bidding for kayaks down there? What are you proposing to give them? What was offered to everybody? The application that goes out was generic, but if you're not going to provide a kayak slide and then you're going to get proposals, no matter how it is funded, the city's going to end up paying for it. Why are we in such a hurry to issue these permits, especially for the kayak, if you are? I think you call it the difference between motorized and non-motorized, because there's been a lot of stuff that just gets done, like the clearing of the bank and everything else. We're doing landscaping, which none of that matters. But the legal point, you're gonna potentially issue a lease and then turn around and add facilities. So are we being honest in what you put out and what you bid, and then you're just gonna come back and let people have it for free, which I don't care, you can do that if you want to, but I don't think you have total exposure to yourselves about what's happening. There needs to be a venue, and thank you.
Thank you, Walter. City Manager, would you address it? Are we looking into constructing or providing a kayak ramp?
Not at this time. I mean, there's additional funding, hopefully, that I know the LRCIA will come up with, and that will materialize in the future.
But, so the RFPs and the bids were specifically for the permitted use and has nothing to do with additional facilities or equipment being placed, correct?
Correct.
Well, okay. So we have people talking about kayak ramps coming, and we're not even talking about them.
No, we're not.
There was an RFP, I mean, there was a,
The kayak RFP asked for one, or I believe, but we're not entertaining it is the point, I think.
That's correct. They have their own, ideas of how they're going to accomplish their business.
Right. Right.
I
Thank you.
do know that there was, I guess, something sent to ORPT for funding for a kayak ramp, if I'm not mistaken. That's supposed to be awarded in September to someone? Yeah, so
Yes.
there is potential there.
Thank you. If there are any more, Mr. and Mrs. Rice, are you on yet? I don't know what topic you're interested in talking about. With that, we'll go to the next item of business, which is to discuss wireless antenna installation program along the boardwalk. If you recall, Verizon is in the permitting process to install antennas on our existing light poles, and actually they would be new light poles, but designed and manufactured to mirror as closely as possible our existing light poles. Again, these are light poles on the east side of the boardwalk. They've got the antennas underneath the light globe, existing light globe. They've got some equipment boxes here. As you know, there's been some concern from the Beach and Boardwalk Committee in particular and others about the possibility of shadows cast by the antennas onto the boardwalk down here. As far as I know, understand, Verizon has had trouble with trying to get their cables hidden and up into the light poles without them being seen. At one point, apparently, they wanted to try to move the light pole over to this location and cap the attachment here, and we said that was not an acceptable solution. So we don't know if they came up with a solution or not. But what got us here is knowing that there were some problems and they weren't ready to go and that there was a delay. I suggested that let's take a look again at additional alternatives. And the one alternative that came up was, what if we install or suggest that they look into installing antennas on the west side of the boardwalk? What would that mean? Would it mean fewer, more? Would they be able to be co-located? What does that mean for visuals, the aesthetics that those perhaps that live in front of the Star of the Sea, right on the boardwalk, instead of looking out their front balcony and seeing multiple light fixtures with antennas on the east side of the boardwalk, they would see fewer, if they would even see the other antennas on the west side of the boardwalk, because they would be behind them. So those are some things that drove us to this conversation today, and I'm very pleased that of our city staffs, City Manager Sharon Lynn and Kevin, working with Verizon, asking them to come forward in a short amount of time to do a presentation and consider relocating the proposed antennas from the east side of the boardwalk to the west side of the boardwalk. So Bonnie, are you able to put the slideshow up here? Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Bonnie Metz, Director of State and Local Government for Verizon. I've been before you numerous times before, and I'm happy to be back in person finally with you. So we're here today to talk about the possibility, the technical feasibility of moving, as the mayor and you all have requested, to the west side of the boardwalk. So I just wanted to introduce on the phone with me, in case there are more technical questions that come up, I have Tony Egidio. Tony is the project manager for Verizon for this project. Mike Akume, he's our RF engineer. We have Joe Filipowski, who is an engineer from French and Carrillo, and Suzanne O'Berry, who you probably know as well, who's the real estate manager from SmartLink that's been working with the city. So let me just start here. One of the things that we were asked to talk about today is the install details and timelines for any new proposed nodes that would be going in on the west side of the boardwalk. So we've been switching over our antennas from the Nokia to Samsung, and so we would be using those. I have a picture in a minute, you'll see. Those new antennas, I believe some of the small cells that are in the city currently have them on, some do not. They will be switched out. They're a more streamlined antenna, don't have as many of the wires sticking out of them, so that will be done, and any new installations will be those antennas going forward. There will also be a junction box that has fiber on the pole. The antenna heights will be 38 feet. When we co-locate, so to the extent that we can go on an existing structure, we we prefer to do that. We prefer to change it out, work with Delmarva or Verizon Telecom in order to accomplish that. Once we get applications, oh, thank you. Sorry about that. Once we get our applications filed with Delmarva or VZT, it can take between 5 and 8 months for them to actually process that and come out and do the make-ready work. But once they replace the pole, they give us a notice to proceed, and then we install the facilities immediately after that. Their electrical inspection is then done. Delmarva will install the meter, and then the same process will apply for VZT poles. For any of the poles that I'm going to be discussing today, Verizon Telecom, if they're new poles, will be installing those poles. This is an existing picture of a node that is already up on Baltimore Avenue that you may have seen. You can see at the top on the left, that is the Samsung radio and antenna. They're both included in that box there, so it's a little cleaner than some of the other ones that we're switching out. You'll see on the right the junction box, the main disconnect panel. The panel on the new poles will be the panel, the ray cap, which is over to the right, which is a newer main disconnect that we're using. Then you have the meter, and then we have the conduit. And then the conduit, as it goes up the pole, there'll be a riser on the right-hand side. So that pole's out there if you'd like to go take a look at that one for more information.
Bonnie, let me just point out to everybody located there, that is somewhat in front of Camp Rehoboth, I believe. And what is the height of that antenna at that particular location? Do you recall?
I'm going to ask maybe Micah Kume.
Yeah, it's about 25 feet, that particular one, so it's a little bit lower.
Thank you very much.
25 feet.
Go ahead.
So when we originally started this, as the mayor has said, we originally proposed going on the west side of the boardwalk when we initially approached the city. I mean, we've been working with the city since 2017 on this, and not necessarily these nodes, but small cells in general, so that we could deal with the capacity issues that were happening and the influx of people that you have coming here, residents, visitors in the summertime. So the first started with small cells, then we also have expanded it to our 5G ultra-wideband small cells. So these are all proposed 5G ultra-wideband small cells that would be going in, and those were proposed on the boardwalk. We were then approached by the city to say, could we move onto the boardwalk? So we proposed 18 nodes on the boardwalk, and then, as the mayor also reiterated, there were some challenges with the design once we got into the construction phase and actually looking at what needed to be in the pole or where they needed to be. So the city once again approached us about the possibility of moving to the west. So we had 18 nodes proposed initially on the boardwalk. We are now proposing 12 poles that would be going in on the west side of the boardwalk. And some of these are existing replacement poles. There are 5 of them that are replacement poles that we can use a Delmarva or a Verizon Telecom pole. Again, we look to use existing infrastructure to the extent possible, but Delmarva has requirements and Verizon at times that prohibit us from doing that because it might be a pole with primary power, it might have an active riser on it, there's a whole checklist that we have to go through. So, and I'm happy to say that we have been working with Delmarva more closely on trying to free up some more poles when they're initially denied, maybe to go back and say, is there something we can do to use that pole? So those discussions are ongoing. So Prospect Street, what we're going to do is run through each of the locations, and you'll see we give a picture of what it looks like. Well, this is a map of all the locations, and we're going to go through each of the nodes as well.
Ms. Metz, excuse me, these are current locations or proposed?
Proposed locations.
And is this the maximum number of proposed locations, or will it expand in the next 3 to 5 years?
No, Mike, please jump in, but I believe this is the maximum that we are proposing along the beach for the foreseeable future. Mike, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. As far as the replacement for the boardwalk poles, these are the the maximum, yep.
But there will be future development throughout the city?
Correct.
Thank you.
So we're going to start at the south and work our way north. So this is a map of where the proposed node is going to be, and we're going to give you two different views. So this is an existing pole, so Prospect Street is an existing pole that we believe we'd be able to use. So we would work with Delmarva on that pole, and you can see the antennas would just be added at the top of that pole. And then the second view is from the beach backwards. So you get a view of what it would look like as you're walking off the beach or the boardwalk.
The view shed is a pole in the middle of the street, although I'm aware that that sits on the north side right now. That's 70 feet from the boardwalk. I walked it off this morning. What is the height of that pole? Are you going to put a new pole, or are you going to use the existing Delmarva utility pole? I wasn't clear on that.
We're going to we would replace the existing Delmarva pole.
And you would replace it with a 38-foot pole, which
Joe?
is, am I wrong? Am I wrong? Are you going to replace it with a 38-foot pole?
I'm asking someone the height of it. I don't know the height of that pole, so that's why I have my experts on the phone here.
I hear you. Your sketch says 38 feet.
Yes. So somebody, Joe, or
Yeah, this Mike. The existing pole, I believe, is 35 feet. So we would replace it with about a 35-foot pole, and then the antennas would go on top. That is my understanding. Joe does the A&E, and I think that is the existing height of the pole. Is that correct?
Am I hearing him say that, yes, the existing pole is 38 feet high?
I believe there is, because of the existence of the secondary wires on the pole, it'll be replaced with a 38-foot pole, so that the secondary wires can go exactly where they were previously, and then our antennas will go on top. So the overall height will be 38.
For those on the phone, be sure to speak a little louder than normal. We're having a hard time hearing you. So what I heard was that the proposed new pole would be about 38 feet high. Just visually, it looks like it's 3 to 4 feet higher than what's there currently.
Or 12 or 13 feet higher.
And no, it's just a few feet. And this is basically to accommodate, the existing wires and cables that are on the pole, so that we can, put them in the same locations and then have our antennas on top of that.
Disclaimer, Commissioner Legree lives on Prospect Street, so.
I see that pole every morning when I walk out of my house.
Yeah, so it's not, we're not going any higher than necessary. It's basically maintaining the existing height so that the secondaries and the existing structures on that pole, and then we'll put antennas on top of that secondary wire, with clearances that are required and such. So that would make it a 38-foot pole.
Your original design that you sent us 2 years ago for the boardwalk had a 15-foot pole. And I think your optic cable was included in the interior, and your power was coming from the interior underneath the boardwalk. What caused us to go from 15 feet to 38 feet, and what caused us to instead of having the accessories inside the pole, to now have them attached to the outside of the pole, in addition to the fiber optics that now come off halfway down the pole? And here's what I'm asking. We're going to be undergrounding one of these days our utilities. And why can't we have a pole at the end of the street that is compliant with all those problems, instead of having stuff come off the side, be it attached on the side, have meters on the side. We look at that every day, and I'm just asking why you have to go to 38 feet when your
Okay.
original poles on the boardwalk were
This is
15 feet.
Yeah,
this is a Delmarva owned pole, so Delmarva would replace the pole.
We can't hear you.
Can you
But we don't have,
speak up, please?
this is a Delmarva owned pole. We don't have any say in how tall the pole is, what they said. We
Still can't hear.
all the questions you're asking about 15 feet. That was to be on the boardwalk. Now that we're off the boardwalk, we need a little bit higher to cover over. There's houses in the way. There's other things that are going to block the propagation. Whereas if you're on the boardwalk, 15 feet is where we need to be. So as far as grounding and everything else, this is a wood pole that we're just trying to put our equipment on. We're not on the boardwalk. It was a pole where it was a decorative pole where the equipment was inside. You can't put equipment inside, obviously, a thin wood pole. So that's basically the difference between the two.
Well, I think this is very reasonable. It's reusing the existing pole. It's only adding 3 or 4 feet to it. But what I'd like to do is let's let them go through their whole thing. Otherwise, we'll never get through it. And, all right.
Can I just ask Bonnie one question that I think will carry out for the entire thing? So Bonnie, on your visual there of the proposed, it shows the antenna on top, but it does not show a junction box, the main disconnect, the meter, the conduit. All of that would be added as well, correct? And it doesn't show that on this photo?
It actually, if you really look, we did, I believe, Joe confirmed this, but it is on there. It's on the back side. You can see it.
You blow up the photo.
You can blow up that photo. It's to the back side facing the sidewalk. And we can put those on any side of the pole that you prefer, just not facing the street.
Okay. It looks much smaller on there than it does on that Baltimore Avenue one. Yeah, yep, I see it.
It looks like somebody's photoshopped the top.
All right, thank
Well,
you.
they certainly didn't replace the pole.
Bonnie, another question that I think can carry over to the next locations. Are other vendors, AT&T, et cetera, able to co-locate on this same pole with you?
Probably not. And we're always willing to talk about co-location with other carriers if they were to come. We don't know where AT&T is deploying. I don't know if they've come to the city to ask for anything else. We're willing to talk about it if they do say that they want to be on the same street with us. But in this case, we'd have to change out the pole yet again, I think, to accommodate them. And sometimes there's interference, and so it just needs to be something that, like I said, we're willing to talk about it if they come and say we need to be on Prospect Street or any of the other streets.
Thank you. It's certainly
Right, and
something
again,
for us
if it's a
to
Delmarva owned
consider
pole, it's
because
not
those
our
other
choice.
vendors
Delmarva
will be
choice.
coming
So
to
if Delmarva
us.
says no, then
Right.
you
And
don't have to
what
say no.
Tony is saying is this is a Delmarva owned pole, so we don't, at that point, maybe we put a new pole up that both carriers go on. It would be an additional pole there, though. So again, we're willing to talk about that if the issue comes up. But again, we like to use the existing infrastructure because that pole's already there, and to the extent we can, we try to do that. And we also try to, a wooden pole in that environment, if you put some kind of decorative pole, in many cases, it would stand out, right? You try to match the environment to what is there, so.
All right, so if we can, we'll try to let Bonnie go through the program unless you have a generic broad question or something. Go ahead, Bonnie, thank you.
Sure. So the second location is Lawrence Street. And this is going to have to be a new pole because, as you can see, that last pole has a transformer, has primary power. We cannot use that pole. What we did was we tried to place the pole as close as we could to that pole. We have to be a certain clearance away by Delmarva and electrical standards. So that pole, you can see the equipment is on the back side of that pole facing the existing pole. Again, we can move that to whatever location on the pole you'd like, except towards the street. This is the picture from the beach view. The third location is Norfolk Street. This also has to be a new pole because we couldn't use any of the poles on the street. And also, there are no poles in that last block. So there you see it. It is set back a little bit further down the street as opposed to right smack dab at the dunes, so that at least if you're looking down the street, it's in the pole line and doesn't stand out. And I do have to say, Mike Akume, myself, Suzanne, and Joe all came down and walked all these locations and really attempted to look at locations and placement of the poles, even though we may get better coverage being smack dab on the boardwalk. We tried to look to see what would be the most aesthetically pleasing and in keeping with the environment as we did this. The next location is Newcastle Street. This is also a new pole. And again, there's no infrastructure that we can use in that location. So if you see, there's a pole. Right now, there's like a parking sign, I believe. If you look on the left, I think that's a parking sign. So what we tried to do is stay in that location and then, move the sign to the existing pole so that there's not something else there as well. And this is from the beach view. The next location is Hickman Street. We believe that we'll be able to use, we were originally denied this pole, but we've since gone back to Delaware, and we believe that we would be able to use the existing pole that is there. So that would just be a replacement pole, again, similar to what we're doing on Prospect Street. The next is Brooklyn Avenue, and this is, again, a new pole. You'll see that pole at the end of the street there. We can't use that because it's got primary on it. So we would place it as close as we can to that pole, which is, I think, about 10 feet or 15 feet. There are, again, requirements about how closely we can place them. Again, you'll see we tried to keep it in the existing pole line so that it doesn't stand out. The next is Wilmington. This is an existing pole that we would be replacing. Baltimore and Boardwalk. So as you're aware, AT&T has 4G or maybe their 5G equipment on one of the Boardwalk volleyball lights. One of the things that we really need to do from a coverage perspective is to also at least have that node, a node on the boardwalk there. So you'll see this is the proposed, markup. We can use the same pole manufacturer that AT&T used in order to replace that, so it looks very similar. The good news about this pole is that it's just 5G for us. So you're just going to see those antennas that we talked about, the Samsung, and some of the other equipment, but you will not see the big shroud that's on that AT&T pole. So it's going to look a lot more streamlined than what's currently on there.
But it necessarily, there will still be two existing poles. AT&T would have one, and then you would add a new one, or existing
We would
pole.
just replace one of the existing poles there. I believe it's to the south of where they are, the one right next to it.
Right now, I believe, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are 3 tall recreational lights in that location right now. The northernmost one is just a normal light. The middle one is a normal light, I believe. And at the southernmost, Kevin, is the AT&T one, I believe. So anyhow, of the other 2 that are virgin, if you will, they would be converted to an antenna, which means replacing it with a taller one. So I just wanted.
There are 3 poles. 2 would have antennas on them, is that correct?
One would be the existing current AT&T, the other one would be a Verizon one. Thank you, Bonnie, go ahead.
And then there is, AT&T already has a pole up, so there's a location already where they have their facilities, and you'll see our proposed meter would go just right next to theirs behind what's existing there now. The next location is Maryland Avenue. This, again, is a new pole. You see, we can't use that Delmarva pole, and there's a guy wire, so we propose to place it as close as we can, and back from the boardwalk as far as we could go and still get adequate coverage to hit the boardwalk. And the north part of town, as you well know, is there's a lot of traffic there. There's a lot of pedestrians. There's a lot of restaurants. It's just the busier end of the boardwalk, and there's a lot of hotel rooms and people using their phones inside those rooms and along the boardwalk and on the beach. So, we really do need. We're trying the best we can to stay back, but at the same time, there's a lot of traffic up there that we need to be able to make sure people can use their phones. Again, as you see, if you look down at, we're going to keep the poles in the existing pole line so that it doesn't mess up the view when you're walking off the beach. Olive Avenue is the 10th node. This one, as I was just discussing, this area, a lot of traffic, and we really need to be close to the beach. This would be a new pole, we could use a decorative pole. I know that we've been working with the city just to look at designs on what they might want. We're trying to keep the new decorative pole that you pick out consistent throughout the city, so that they all look the same, so there's consistency to the extent possible. So this is one design. The antennas are shrouded here, but we could change that, and if you're fine with the actual panel antennas, we can do that too. Virginia Avenue, this is another pole. It would be another decorative pole. We also tried to keep it so that if you look down the boardwalk, the poles weren't sticking out into the view, right? So if you're standing looking down, that we didn't have one that was right up next to the grass there. So this is back a little bit in line with the building. The last one is at Surfside Place. This is an existing pole that's abandoned. We believe it's probably a Verizon telecom pole. There's nothing really on it. So we propose to just replace that one.
So, Mayor, may I make?
Yes, ma'am.
Have questions. I think you've done a nice job of taking these off of the boardwalk. I'm pleased to see that. And mostly I think there's some good solutions here. But one thing I am looking at, and you've mentioned it yourself, that the north end of the boardwalk where there are hotels and a lot of people using the service, is it, especially since it's coming from some of the hotels, have you thought about the potential of putting those antennas on top of the buildings? And if so, would that be a solution? You've got several hotels at that end, particularly when I look at Olive and Maryland, that might be a solution.
Yeah, I'll let Mike answer that. We generally don't put the small cells. I mean, we put macros on facility on the top of hotels. We don't generally put the small cells on there because it can, depending on the placement, it's difficult to get the coverage that we need because 5G is line of sight. So you have to see the antenna, the ultra wideband, to get the service. So they can't be kind of hidden, which is why we're always looking to try to put them in the space where we get the most coverage for everybody. So go ahead, Mike, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, pretty much spot on what Bonnie said. You know, with the with the 5G radios, you know, we prefer to have them on the poles and on the individual structures because we need, you know, the line of sight as much as possible, and also the, you know, the supporting equipment. So we would more stick with macro solutions on top of buildings, and then have the 5G you know, radios on poles. Because once you talk about buildings, you know, antennas may potentially have to be separated by greater distances, being, you know, different corners and such to get all the sectors. So with the 5G solutions, the poles are preferred.
This is an opportunity to ask any further questions of Verizon. I'm very pleased. Thank you for coming here and entertaining this, and your slide presentation, especially with your different perspectives from the boardwalk and the street, were very welcoming. Thank you. I want to remind the commissioners that the target of our discussion today, at least to introduce the discussion day, is to discuss requiring wireless antennas to be installed on the west side of the boardwalk, except in certain circumstances. Why I added except in certain circumstances is because utilizing those tall recreational lights seems to make sense and doesn't seem to hurt the aesthetic, in my perspective, as much as what the other proposal utilizing the existing lights are. So I'm very pleased that they came forward with this alternative. You know, that doesn't mean it's not without some questions or something, but overall, I'm very pleased. So I'd like to end up going to the public at some point, but offer you the first to ask more questions and then enter into that debate on requiring antennas to be on the west side except in special circumstances. And again, why I'm saying requiring is so that we perhaps codify this so that when future vendors come to us, they have to follow the same suit.
I think that
Bonnie-
makes sense. I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Agreed. Bonnie, can you confirm that the only instance here in your proposals where it would not be on the west side is that Baltimore Avenue location?
Yes, that is correct.
I really do appreciate you working with the city. I think you guys have jumped through some hoops and made a lot of changes and thought outside the box and worked with our requirements. But and you are utilizing a decent amount of Delmarva existing poles, but you also are putting in quite a bit new poles. And Mayor, I don't know if it's appropriate, but I'm kind of interested with asking Glenn what's going on in Dewey Beach, and if that has any impact here on putting new poles up rather than utilizing existing poles.
Glenn, do you have anything to offer?
Yeah, so there was recently a lawsuit filed, a federal suit, challenging the placement of the poles in Dewey Beach. I understand that Verizon is now working with the town to come to some resolution. So, but I don't see that litigation actually impacting what's going on in Rehoboth right now. I'm not sure that's a case that if it's actually pursued will take many months, you know, maybe more than a year to get to some sort of resolution in it. So I wouldn't let that litigation drive the discussion in Rehoboth Beach.
And that litigation was by residents, not by the town.
That's right. That's right.
And Glenn, just to confirm, that court case or that lawsuit is challenging the installation of new poles, correct?
That's the way I understand it. I haven't read the details of the complaint, but I understand that the challenge there is there's new poles at the end of the streets that run to the beach, and it's a challenge to new poles. That's right.
Yeah, and it's specifically on the dunes, which is what they're suing, that they're on the dunes, which is not the case here. I don't believe there's any.
I
not proposing
appreciate
anything
it.
undoings here.
I know it's a little off topic, but I think it was relevant to at least understand the facts there and how it relates or doesn't relate here.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just, again, we're just entering into the conversation here, but I also wanted to share with you that I've asked the Beach and Boardwalk Committee through Commissioner Legree, and they have this on their agenda. So there's, besides him, 8 or 9 other members on his committee to help share and give some perspectives on this. And you meet when? Next Monday, I believe.
We meet on the 12th at 09:30, and we have 5G on our agenda for discussion.
Very good, thank you. So we'll be getting a report at some point before we take any action on this. The action that we would like to take, I would like to take, would be at least by the August regular meeting, conduct a vote on what the policy should be. Whether we want to require wireless indeed to be on the west side of the boardwalk, except in certain circumstances. We could do that as, it would be too soon to do that in July, so we would have the other opportunity to talk in July if we needed to, but otherwise this could be again on the August workshop meeting, receive a report from the Boardwalk and Beach Committee, and then put this on for a vote. I think that would be adequate time to allow everybody in the public to respond and comment. With that,
Mayor, may I ask a
yes, ma'am.
question? What would you expect from Verizon at the August workshop meeting? Another presentation or similar?
We would probably just bring this presentation back and entertain any questions, probably.
Okay.
So I'd like, before we go to the public, I'd like to open it up to the commissioners.
Mayor, a quick comment. I'm certainly in favor of requiring these poles and antennas to be off the boardwalk and to the west. I'm certainly in favor of that. I think we as a group, as we go forward in our discussions, do need to think seriously about other vendors coming to us and wanting to put up additional poles, even if they're on the west side. I mean, how many of these poles can we have? I mean, we've got AT&T, there are others out there. I think we need to think about that and what it means for the aesthetics, what it means for all of the other public safety concerns of having 5G wireless cells along those streets.
Very good. Any other commissioner?
Yeah,
Commissioner
thank you
Gossett,
for the
please.
presentation, very informative. But I may have misheard you in the earlier part. You had mentioned 18 nodes on the boardwalk?
Originally, we were going to replace 18 of the light poles with 18, small cells. They would have the 5G on them. We have 12 now that will be going in, so it's down from the 18.
So that's a reduction. It's not just you haven't addressed those other 6 yet.
No, it's just a reduction because they're like Commissioner LeGray said, they were lower. They were only 15 feet or 20 feet, whatever. So it doesn't propagate as far. So being able to put them on the wooden poles at a 38-foot height, it
Greater
goes further,
coverage.
and we need less.
So with the 12 poles, as I look, we have 7 new of the 12 and 5 are existing.
Correct.
And then you spoke earlier about traffic or density. How often do you reevaluate that density? Would there be a need in the future for additional antennas because of additional traffic or need or what have you? How do you address that and how frequently?
I'll let Mike address it.
Yeah.
I'll take a
Yeah,
first stab at
sure.
it too, just to say, for the foreseeable future,
Which is defined as how long?
and that's what I'm going to let him.
Okay.
I mean, we're not coming back next year and putting more up. So Mike, just why don't you say how we do that?
Yeah. So typically we look at, the performance indicators, the load on the sites. And this is also, tied into our existing macro sites. So these small cells will play a role in kind of offloading, that capacity. And these are kind of specific, purpose built, with the millimeter wave, spectrum. So we don't have any plans to add additional radios to these millimeter wave nodes, but by the beach. It's just not needed, for these specific ones. But we do evaluate, performance pretty much every season, from quarter to quarter. There's peak season and off season. And typically the peak season, which is the summer months from like Memorial Day to Labor Day, where there's heavier usage, we analyze it every quarterly and yearly and factor that into our decision making. But these specific nodes will not be, we will not be adding any additional, technologies to them.
And could you also, how many macro cell sites do you currently have in the city?
We have Sea Star, which is on top of the hotel. We have Rehoboth Beach, which is on the north side. It's also on top of a building. I think those are it. There's Silver Scarborough, which is the water tank on Coastal. I'm not sure if that's still Rehoboth Beach, but in Rehoboth Beach City, we have those two macros which are on top of the buildings. One on the north side and one on the south side on Sea Star, or South Star of the Sea Hotel.
Oh, okay, and is there any discussion or in your traffic studies that there would be an expansion needed for the macro cells in the city?
There's always, I mean, if we do come into, new spectrum, there's always that, yes, possibility that we might add additional spectrum to, to those, but we're not adding the millimeter wave to those two macros, no.
So, and again, I know this is very kind of sci-fi in my mind, but in upgrading or changing those macro cells, would that be just a simple change out of the equipment, or would you have additional site needs?
No, it would just be a change of the equipment, basically replacement of equipment. If radios need to be replaced, they'll be replaced. Antennas need to be replaced, they'll be replaced. But we're not doing any kind of new construction builds for the macros. So whatever is existing there, we would just replace the equipment that is currently installed, or add to it. Yep.
But future traffic studies might indicate that would be an increase in macro cells.
Not necessarily, no, not in the macro. Depending on the spectrum that we have available to us, the macro solution might not be the best solution. Again, it ranges from a wide array of the bandwidth available and the propagation characteristics of a huge macro, which is a lower band like 700 or 850 megahertz versus a mid band or higher band like millimeter wave, which is in the 28 gigahertz range. So we would factor that into our decision making. But macros, additional macros is something that we will not be, necessarily be putting as a first or be pursuing.
But depending on available spectrum, there might be an additional increase in micro cells throughout the city, correct?
That is possible, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, along those same lines, you were talking about density issues. How would it be affected by, there's potential development, several large developments, one right at Rehoboth Avenue in the boardwalk, a large hotel and another one on the first block of Baltimore Avenue. Does that impact having to make changes in the location?
It may, and like Mike said, we do the traffic studies and we check those things periodically throughout the year. So once it comes online, then we would look to maybe make some changes to accommodate that. So, I mean, we're always looking at the network and how it's being used and trying to make it the best experience for our customers.
And I know you can't speak for your competitors, but Verizon or AT&T is probably going through the same process, correct?
I don't know what 18 has planned here. I don't know if the town manager.
That's up to us to determine those.
I know that they haven't to date been rolling out the 5G millimeter wave anywhere in the beach communities that I'm aware of so far. It's just been Verizon.
Okay, thank you.
What is your time frame then? Because I know it's been slowed down from what it was initially.
It was this summer.
Right.
We really want to get these up in advance of the next season. So, that's why we were saying we're willing to consider it, but at the same time, it's been a while that we've been having these discussions, so we really wanted to get moving on it and make sure that we can come to a conclusion and get the permits in process, because as you saw, it takes us just to deal with the other utility companies, to replace the pole, to get the make-ready work, to have them move their facilities, months, 6 months. So, and then we have to do the construction and everything else, so, yeah.
Well, that's why I've agreed to try to resolve this by the August voting meeting so that they can have a path forward, whatever way it is. One thing that happens if we require them to be on the west side, it preserves the existing light poles and allows us to seek out dark sky-like compliant globes and light fixtures there. And so I think that would be very exciting, and that would be a cheaper solution for us to resolve that. And again, as I showed the picture early, eliminate the possibility of shadows cast by the antennas on there. Are there any other questions or comments by commissioners before I go to the public?
Sorry, just one other, would this same team be the team that would be investigating additional microsites in the city?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
When I first heard this from the mayor, when we were making up the agenda for the boardwalk committee, I thought, wow, this is great. Well, my thought was that we were going to move the decorative poles, new decorative poles, to the west side of the boardwalk. And the mayor and I talked, keep them back from the line of the buildings, and they'd have antennas on them, and they would look good, and they would be, well, you may remember it differently, but that was what I was thinking about. I thought that those would be on the west side of the boardwalk. Well, it turns out that there are 38-foot poles, if I read this correctly, which are monster poles, and that they're not on the west side of the boardwalk, and they're not 15 feet high. They're 38 feet high, and they're back in the end of the public right-of-way. So it's totally different. And now we're seeing that if you can't get a pole, you may have to put one next to it. And the folks in Dewey Beach have been discussing this all along. We have the same problems that they have, I see. And I believe in my heart that you're going to have additional poles all over town eventually for 5G. I think I attended a lecture you gave, Bonnie, maybe 3 years ago or 4 years ago over in Lewis, and I think you said that we'd have a lot of antennas when 5G came along. But I'm most disturbed by the fact that we're not getting our decorative poles. They've gone to 38-foot high wooden poles, and the street light will be hung off the side. I had visions of having a decorative street light at the end of Prospect Street with maybe a antenna on top of it, but that's not going to happen. And I really think, and I want to say this to the public, we, the city of Rehoboth Beach, need to hire a professional radio frequency engineer to act as our consultant, because we, including me, are asking naive questions, and we don't know whether we're getting the right answers or not. We know we're getting the Verizon version of our answers, but we need to have professional help, professional consulting help, and I've said that since I was sworn in September. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. For me, the mention of that they're going to have a concern of 5G all over town is irrelevant to this discussion. One way or another, what's important is, I firmly believe, one way or another, Verizon is going to have antennas near the boardwalk, in the vicinity of the boardwalk, and along the length of the boardwalk. And the question is, do we want to control some of the aesthetics and placement of those? And I think that this is a good route. We can either abandon this idea and go back to and send them back to the drawing board on how to resolve their problems and putting them on the east side of the boardwalk, or we can agree to work with them on requiring that the antennas for not just Verizon, but future vendors, to go on the west side of the boardwalk, not necessarily a straight line down the west side of the boardwalk, but to the west of the boardwalk. And I think overall, generally, they've got a very good program. So I look forward to what the public feedback is and putting this again on the August agenda for this workshop agenda for discussion before targeting a vote at the August regular meeting. If there's no more.
Mayor, before we
Yeah.
go to the public comments, I want to pick up on where Commissioner Legree left off. I think he made a very good point. That we ask questions and we do get a perspective, and I appreciate Bonnie and her team bringing all of this information and having listened to us. But I think a neutral party with the expertise that Commissioner Legree defined would be very, very helpful to us. And I understand you're looking at having this done by next visitor tourist season. So I'm not sure why we have to vote in August as opposed to bringing a neutral party with expertise in front of us that could help us think this through before we go and vote and make final decisions.
Well, we may be able to do both, but there is a time constraint, I thought, that from the time they've applied for their permits and everything, that we're trying to help accommodate them and not push them off farther. Glenn, can you help me with that?
I thought there was a
Thanks, Mayor.
time
So,
constraint.
yeah, I mean, part of the discussion has been the shot clock and the timing that, the cities, you all are aware there are shot clocks and times under the statute by which we have to approve. Verizon has made clear to us that they want to move as promptly as they can because they didn't get the install done this year. I'll share with you all that there was a request that we would enter into an agreement indicating by what time the city has to render a decision. I've not recommended entering into that agreement yet because I don't think it puts us in the best position, but there are federal statutes that require the city to act under a certain timeline. So there is, some need to move expeditiously because Verizon does have certain rights under those federal statutes.
All right, look, I'd say we target our next conversation. Again, we're going to go to the public for the August workshop. That'll give us time to look into the possibility of a consultant.
And I will speak more on this topic at that
Yeah,
time.
okay.
I've said all I need to say.
And we move from there. Go ahead.
I've said all I need to say.
Oh, okay, okay.
Mayor, I'm
sorry.
Go ahead.
I just remembered that our last meeting, we had this very same discussion. Time was of the essence. There was an attorney online with Verizon who hinted that they might file suit against us if we kept dragging our feet. And I remember that we all decided that ship had sailed. And now here we are again. And we still haven't gotten professional help. Thanks, Mayor.
I think we need to move forward in the path you indicated, Mayor, in August. But I think at the same time, we need to get an expert for the very reasons Commissioner Byrne mentioned. 8 months from now, we could have 3 additional poles being requested on each one of these streets. I do think we need more restrictions and more meat put into the ordinance that would help us forecast on some of those things. But I do think we need to move forward. I'm happy with moving the antennas to the west side of the boardwalk. I think that's great. And the only last thing I would add is under those special circumstances that we codify that in some way, that it's not left up to someone's discretion years from now.
Correct, that's the intention. If it's all right, we'll go to the members of the public. Carol Walter.
Thank you, Walter Birmingham, 123 on Open Avenue. Without divulging corporate secrets, we see out on the highway fiber optic crews working on a backbone system that is basically fiber. Does will that come into town to take care of the residential areas or a system of its type, not based on the antennas that you're proposing to put along the boardwalk?
Are you asking if we would bring FiOS, our landline
ma'am.
service? We don't have any intention of building out FiOS in Rehoboth.
I was aware from a previous engineer no longer around that FiOS would not be put in. So what do we get from 5G? What services come out of 5G to serve the people you're proposing to serve, ma'am?
So the 5G ultra-wideband, which, you're aware that we did announce, we did announce the Delaware beaches as one of our 5G national locations. It's extremely fast and it can carry really high bandwidth. So you can get, download a movie where it would normally take you 7 minutes in seconds. It's super fast, and you could use it as an alternative to the landline services, fiber service, because you can get speeds, in the 100 megabits up to a gigabit.
But it is data.
It's data and voice over it as well. And you can use it to stream TV and play games and all sorts of things.
I understand from friends in the telecom industry, Verizon, that just as our electric meters and the city's water meters are being read wirelessly, that in early time, without divulging to the competition, of course Comcast knows what's going on, that there will be no more lines running from the pole into the house, that there will be boxes up on the pole, just like like Delmarva reads the meters. So how do the people in the houses, residences and other places, rentals in Rehoboth, how do they get the services that the type of equipment, 5G, at this point in time up on the boardwalk? Is this something, a wave that's going to, as soon as we get this done, going to move across the town into country club estates and every place else?
I don't know the current build plan. We do intend to put more 5G antennas through the town, and those services can be used by the residents in their homes if they have line of sight or they're near it, to get the same services that you would get on a FiOS service. A lot of things are being over the top, your Netflix, your things like that, the streaming services. So it is, in some sense, the 5G is going to be a competitor to Comcast, which is who you have right now.
I wasn't so worried about Comcast, but I was wondering how the rest of our community, are we going to have more of these structures to hold antennas or co-locate on Delmarva, et cetera, throughout the town? Is this just the beginning?
I don't know how many more are going up. I know that we do have plans to build out more in the city.
Thank you, Walter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else here want to speak? And I've never met up with Sarah and Eugene Rice. Are you there yet? I guess not. With that, thank you, Bonnie. We appreciate it. We'll put this on the agenda next for our August workshop. We'll give you what the dates are and if there's any expectations. And appreciate the conversation from everybody here and the public.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
With that, we'll go to the next item of new business, and that is to discuss possible uses of the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA.
Thank you, Mayor. We are still waiting for our ARPA funding in the amount of $834,657.16. We're slated to get one half of that, slightly over $400,000 this fiscal year, very soon, and then the remaining half sometime next year. I'm not certain when that will be. So we've been on a multitude of conferences and virtual meetings in the past couple of months to discuss just how we are able and eligible to use the funds coming to us. I sent out a document to you yesterday prepared by Madison in trying to cull the main uses and the gist of a multitude of documents in these 4 or 5 pages that she put together. So the bottom line, that we come up with, obviously, is are the uses, the 4 eligible uses for the funds. And Bert, if you want to just speak to the commissioners about this and what our recommendations are, that would be very helpful.
Thank you. Under this, the American Rescue Plan Act, there were essentially 4 categories that would qualify. One is economic impact, and that doesn't really fit us because we've been reimbursed for most of those expenses, so there really wouldn't be any opportunities there. The second category is premium pay. The intention of this act was to be able to compensate your relatively low-paid workers who were in harm's way. And in that category, they define these as essential workers. And from looking at our workforce, it looks like police, 911, sanitation workers, which would include your trash department and your wastewater and water, would qualify. There's some thresholds in there. There's some logistical issues with applying that because you've got in that group, I don't know that you'd achieve your desired objectives because in that group of essential workers, you have some relatively low-paid and relatively high-paid workers. So I'm not sure from my reading that you'd be able to achieve the results you really wanted in that. The next category was lost revenue, and they're looking at revenue on an aggregate basis. So we can say that we came up short on our parking revenue, but in total, we wouldn't probably qualify from my cursory review. There's a formula. I mean, basically, it involves an average of your past 3 years of revenues or using a factor of 4.1%, to go through to make the calculation. And we don't really fit that category. The final category is the investments in water, broadband infrastructure, and sewer and storm water. And we have projects that we did postpone, and one of those involved water meters. Kevin's got a list of those projects, but that was probably the best category for us to fit in. There are a lot of details in this. It's about a 40-page document that was put out. And so I think without going into all the little details, I think I just want to give you sort of a general summary of the 4 categories where I think we fit. And my recommendation is that we use this money, and it's not a lot of money really, for infrastructure. And one thing I want to do is talk about and I forgot about this, the allocation methodology. We fit in a category of non-entitlement units, which is basically the lowest category. You have county governments, metropolitan areas. Those governments, they're all going to be reimbursed directly by the feds. We're getting our money. It's passed through the state. And it's based upon a total population of all the NEUs. And we're pretty small population-wise. So our percentage is less than 1% of the total amount that's being distributed of this $834,000. So I think going back to the investment in infrastructure, I think that's probably the best application of the funding. And any
Thank you.
questions?
Thanks, Bert.
Yeah, just a clarification on, is it, can we use it for any infrastructure expenses, or they have to be specifically things that were deferred during the pandemic?
No, they don't have to be things that were deferred. If we can identify them as necessary projects.
Okay, so anything identified as necessary?
That's right.
Okay, great. Okay.
And Cap, I'm sorry.
Oh, just a quick question. Under this, it says necessary infrastructure, water, sewer. Is sewer specifically sanitary or stormwater? Could it be either?
It could be either, because what I was looking for when I was reading this, I saw, where does it say stormwater? And I did find documentation where the
Oh,
stormwater
great.
would
Oh,
qualify.
wonderful. I didn't read it that way. That's great. Yeah.
I'd certainly vote for that too. I agree with Commissioner Gay and Commissioner Gossett. We have huge unmet stormwater needs, but I also remember that we ran out of money when we were wanting to replace the water meters. We couldn't do the whole thing, and so I would understand either way. But we are getting eventually all of that money. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. And
Okay.
Kevin has a list if you want to.
That's what I was just going to say. I'd like to hear from the Director of Public Works.
I think it is the best use of the funds, though,
surprised you have a list.
what's been proposed.
My list is long.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners and City Manager. I clearly have a list. We can use that money in a whole lot of places, as you know. My recommendation would be, I'd go back to Bert. I would love to take part of that and find out how to reward some of those guys that worked all through that. And if there's a way we can figure out how to reward those guys that were out there dealing in the public every day while 90% of the public's cringing at home, afraid to go outside, they were still out there picking up trash or handing out masks or dealing with knuckleheads on the boardwalk and all those things. So if there's a way to take some of that and get it back to those guys that were worked through the pandemic, I would be all in favor of that, even with this long CIP list of things that I would like to do too. But if we can figure out that, I would say that would be the top priority. After that, I would go to those target those projects that we deferred from last year. I mean, we took $100,000 right off our street paving because we didn't think we could be able to afford it. We took $100,000 right off our water meter contract. They talked about it. We took $100,000 right off our sewer rehab. So I would target those first. They're all also very easy to implement because it's a programmatic kind of project. So typically we have a contract for those each year. We could just increase the scope by adding X number of new additional meters or X number of feet of lining or whatever it is we would want to do with respect to those projects. But I would target the ones that we actually deferred last year because we wanted to do them this past year.
And that's about 300, sounds like, from what you just said? 100 here, 100 there? Mhm.
Nice round figures would be 25% goes to the employees, if that's the number, and then we could do the 100,000 we deferred off each of those projects last year. And if there's any left, I would say we kind of hold it as a reserve for our Delaware Avenue restrooms because we know that material costs have gone up in the past year due to COVID and forest fires and all those other things. And if we're going to be looking for a little extra because the bid comes in a little high, then we kind of have that as a reserve as well.
So my recommendation would be that we wait. It should be very soon. So we have those funds deposited in the city's account and then come back to you with more specifics.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think this sounds very good. Thank you, and thank you, Bert.
We want to go to the members of the public. Carol, I assume you don't want to talk. Walter, do you have anything on this topic? No? Sally?
Good morning. It's nice to see you all in person for a change. I am so pleased to hear this recommendation from Bert, because that's really the reason I'm here, and certainly the encouragement that we have gotten from Commissioner Legree about the need for comprehensive stormwater management. And just sort of on cue, we got this big storm that came in last night and overnight, and we only have to walk around or ride around the city and see what happens when we don't have a comprehensive stormwater management plan. DENREC, highly recommends that communities have adequate stormwater plans, and so does the EPA. And unfortunately, to date, the city has done little to address these issues, which were raised in our comments for the 2010 Comprehensive Development Plan, and based on more data, our recommendations for the 2020 CDP plan to address climate change by developing and implementing a comprehensive stormwater plan, as well as the installation of a citywide green infrastructure, which are highly recommended by DENREC and the EPA. Additionally, that plan should include new technology, devices for new technology that will filter out a lot of the harmful substances that go into our lakes and ocean from stormwater. So I am hoping that you, as as elected officials, will have a leadership role in doing this. I also want to tell you about another fund that is becoming available. Bert is correct that water and sewer can be addressed in the fund you're discussing, but also the General Assembly passed legislation which creates a water trust account to provide for $22.5 million that can be used for water pollution control. It's just awaiting governor's signature, which is pretty certain will happen, as he was the originator of this idea. It is reported that the legislation gives priority to green infrastructure. So let's not waste that opportunity, but begin the process as soon as the bill is signed by the governor. I can assure you that many needy communities will jump on it, so this is a case of early in and early out. And you should also explore options for imposing dedicated stormwater fees, whether they be through enterprise or other kinds of assessments to pay for this program. And you have so many communities who have done this to date, and they're as varied as Washington, D.C., Lewis, and Newark. I believe you would agree that it's not well, let me just get back here. My phone jumps. We need only to watch the news coming daily from communities around the country and the world that are greatly impacted by floods, fires, and severe storms resulting from climate change. Most were unprepared to meet these challenges, resulting in loss of life and property. I believe we all agree that that is not the kind of headlines we want to see coming from Rehoboth Beach. Your collective and individual leadership now can result in a community protected from the devastating impacts of climate change. And that's my statement.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sally.
I want to go for some of that green infrastructure grant money for sure.
I agree. The greatest thing we can do for climate change is to have a viable urban canopy. And for stormwater management too.
Any further comment from the commissioners? Do the document camera again. Ann, please. Our next item of business is to discuss impacts of Delaware ending its state of emergency, by example, changes to temporary Freedom of Information Act allowances and other allowances provided in the city's 6th modification to proclamation of civil emergency and order concerning the COVID-19 pandemic. As many of you know, we are anticipating the governor to lift the current state of emergency on July 13th. And anticipating that, I have written up a proclamation that I wanted to share with you. In essence, it indicates that whereas we have, the city of Rehoboth Beach has a first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth modification to the state of emergency. And whereas the governor issued his own 29th modification to state of emergency. And whereas on May 21st, the Board of Commissioners of the city of Rehoboth Beach adopted the sixth modification to provide that face covering requirements shall be consistent with the Governor Carney's 29th modification. And again, whereas it is anticipated Governor Carney will lift or otherwise terminate Delaware state of emergency effective July 13th. Whereas consistent with the action of the governor, I find it appropriate to terminate the city's civil emergency proclamation and order, and to do so contemporaneously with the governor's termination. Whereas item 2 of the 6th modification to the city's state of emergency order provides that certain parking meter fees shall be suspended on each Monday from 4 p.m. till 10 p.m. ending on Sunday, September 19th, 2021. Whereas item 3 of the 6th modification of city state of emergency provides a city policy concerning outdoor dining and merchandise racks on public and private property. Privileges shall be extended until and including October 31st. Whereas having been approved by the Board of Commissioners, I desire to permit these items 2 and 3 of the 6th modification to survive this order of termination, such that item 2 will not terminate until Sunday, September 19th, and item 3 will not terminate until October 31st, 2021. And here's the proclamation part. Now, therefore, I, Stanley A. Mills, Jr., Mayor of the City of Rehoboth Beach, by virtue of the authority vested in me in the Municipal Code of the City of Rehoboth Beach, do hereby order the proclamation of civil emergency and order concerning COVID-19 pandemic terminated, with certain provisions surviving as follows. The proclamation of civil emergency and order concerning the COVID-19 pandemic, originally ordered on March 22, 2020, with the current modifications thereto being the 6th modification, is hereby terminated. Item 2 of the 6th modification of the city state of emergency order, providing that parking meters established in section 92-73 of the Municipal Code of the City of Rehoboth Beach shall be suspended on each Monday from 4 p.m. until 10 p.m. through the 2021 parking meter season ending on Sunday, September 19th, shall survive this order. Item 3 of the 6th modification of the city state of emergency, providing that the city's policy concerning outdoor dining and merchandise racks on public and private property privileges shall be extended until and including October 31st, 2021. That shall survive this order. This order has the force and effect of law, may be enforced in accordance with section 2211 of the city code. And after being executed by the mayor, this order shall take effect immediately when the state of Delaware's state of emergency due to the public health threat, COVID-19, is lifted or otherwise terminated. I'd like to, if there's no objections, go ahead and sign this now. Again, it goes into effect when the state of emergency is lifted. But it does provide that the meterless Monday survives and the allowance for outdoor dining and merchandise racks use of sidewalk area survives. Are there any questions?
I just want to thank the mayor for adding number 2 and 3, that those survive to the date that we had previously discussed. I think it's very important for the well-being of our downtown and the economy.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the public? If not, then I'm going to go ahead and sign this baby. Very good. Thank you very much.
City Manager, it was never something that we approved. I think it was more administrative. The the delivery and takeout spots that some of the restaurants have. Is it your intention that that will continue
Yes.
through the end of the season?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
I would say that's part of our package, and that's fine. With that, with the lifting of the state of emergency, there's certain FOIA provisions that terminate also. However, there's new legislation, I think it might have just been passed, that we need to look at that makes some FOIA allowances also. So we'll be reporting on that at the next meeting. All right? Thank you very much.
Going to report on that in the July regular meeting? Oh, great, okay, yeah. Curious.
With that, our next item of business is discuss the possibility of changing the time limits for selected parking spaces, but parking spaces only within the area of the bandstand circle on Rehoboth Avenue. Let me stick this. Ed, you brought this up. Do you want to introduce the subject, or do you want me to?
Sure, I can. This came about several business owners reaching out to me. I believe they reached out to Main Street and the Chamber, saying that an hour just wasn't long enough for their customers, and they wanted it to be longer. I walked around and spoke to, I think, almost every business owner around the bandstand on the Horseshoe, and while it wasn't consistent on how long it should be, everyone agreed it should be more than an hour, but not as long as 10 hours. So that's kind of why this is before us today. I think we'll remember that we created essentially no time limit on meters last year before the season started. Then the pandemic happened. And because of that, we had an hour, I believe, around the bandstand because of the pandemic last year. Otherwise, it would be 10 or 12 hours. But after speaking to all of those business owners, none of them wanted to be 12 hours and think that would hurt their business. So the only other area that we have not proceeded with a 12-hour time limit is the Grove Park parking lot. So I think that's why we're here today, and I think I look forward to hearing from Carol as well.
Thank you, Ed. Evan, if you would push that drawing up a little bit so we can read your commentary underneath. Maybe Ann even enlarge that just a tad bigger. Evan was kind enough to prepare this, and that's my sheet, so I don't have one to refer to. I have to read Evan, if you want to explain your bandstand parking time limit history.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mayor. So I was asked by the mayor to basically provide a history of time limits down around the bandstand for the last 5 years. So 2017 and 18 were a little bit hazy for me because I just started with the city and was new with the parking department. But going back through some of the minutes from some of the previous meetings and some Cape Gazette articles, I found that the sidewalk side of Rehoboth Avenue had a 2-hour maximum limit. The median had a 3-hour maximum limit. So in 2017 and 18, it was a 2-hour maximum. Then in 2019, the Parking Advisory Committee had made the recommendations to the Board of Commissioners to do a 3-hour maximum with the thought of trying to encourage people to move as opposed to park on the avenue and go to the beach all day. And then in 2020, we had made that change to the 12-hour maximum parking, essentially no time limit. But then in June, after the pandemic hit, and after installation of the barriers to accommodate the outdoor dining, we changed that to a 1-hour maximum to sort of accommodate the businesses down there, to have visitors essentially, or encourage visitors to come, shop, dine, and not necessarily go to the beach when parking at the bandstand. And since then, it's been a 1-hour maximum parking at all 4 meters around the bandstand.
Thank you, Evan, for preparing this. Also, I want to make sure you note that currently with the 1 hour time limit, there are no 30-minute parking spaces. But if you note up there, previous to the 1 hour time limits, there were 10 30-minute meters. So there's kind of a relationship there. With that, Carol Everhart from the Rehoboth Beach Dewey Beach Chamber of Commerce agreed to poll the members. And Carol, will let you do your thing, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, this started with calls from the visitors, as it usually does. And the visitors' complaint was, gee, I pulled in, I saw a parking space, I parked, and when I got to the meter, it said 1 hour. So there was originally a signage problem. That led to them talking to the businesses and complaining to the businesses. And then that led to some better signage that's been placed down there now. It could be a little bit more prominent on the signage, but at least it's there and much better than when it originated. So we sent staff down twice. There are 19 businesses around the circle. And it was very interesting because 9 of them would prefer more than an hour. 7 of them were okay with an hour. And at first we had 3 that were difficult to find. 1 was closed. We've since heard from them. They are okay either way. And the other 2, one did not want to respond. And the other one was closed. So where we're at with it is you're really, if you take the one that doesn't carry, it could go either way, you're at 9 and 7. So it's certainly not clear, but I will say this to you. During the years, the 17 and 18, when it was at 2 hours, I went back and looked in our complaint file. We didn't have complaints those years. I didn't have them from the businesses, and I didn't have them from the visitor. So since that time, it's been moved around quite a bit, and there's always been some issue, some way. So from my point of view, looking at it and the results, it looks like it needs to be, compromise is 2 hours. And there was no complaints there. That was the deciding point for me, was that when I looked in all those years, the years it was 2 hours, there was no complaint. So I'm glad I'm not you.
Are people complaining about the time, or the time limit, or are they complaining about the signage that doesn't tell them the time?
There was 2 issues. Originally, when it got changed, it was on the meter, so you had to walk to the meter. So you parked, got out of your car, you walked, and then there was a sticker on the meter that said 1 hour limit. Then when I mentioned this, Evan was very cooperative. They put some sandwich signs up down there that says beyond this point, 1 hour. It could be more prominent, but at least it's there. But I get it, the fact that we didn't have any complaints for 2 years, that says a lot to me.
Like a sweet spot.
I'm glad I'm not you.
Carol, have you gotten any positive or negative feedback from businesses or visitors about the 12-hour parking?
Oh, that was terrible. That was the worst year we ever had. No, when 12-hour, that was great. It was when you went to the 4-hour, they had to move their car.
Right. But since we've moved to 12, I'm really not counting last year because it was such a unique year. But so far this summer, no complaints.
No. And you really couldn't test it because the first year you went from the 4-year to the 12 was 2020. Well, we really couldn't, we really didn't get enough information to know. But clearly the 12 hours working, to me, the 2 hour around the bandstand seems to be the years with no complaint. And I've not gotten any complaints about Grove Park.
Carol, my last question for you. You're always about simple and consistency. Do you think it's challenging having a different time period in that small section than throughout the rest of the city?
Not if you keep it consistent. It needs to be whatever you decide on, just like you decided on your 12-hour and the complaints went away. If you make a decision on whatever you decide around the bandstand, I think that consistency is critical. When you change it every year, we have new visitors every year. So it's, the ones that came back from last year, they're expecting the same thing they found. And the new ones, it's just confusing if it's not a consistent, if all it is 12 hours everywhere but Grove Park and the bandstand, okay.
Was this change made in reaction to the COVID issue? Is that what I understand?
No, the change was made because when you put it into the you must move your car after 4 hours, the complaints were, the tremendous, more complaints than we've ever had on parking. They did not want to move their car, they were mad. Yeah.
I'd like to ask the city manager and chief, if we decide to change the parking, is it realistic that it would be done this year? Or would this be something to implement next year, considering that we would obviously need to vote on it and preferably have one session before that to look at the ordinance? So that takes, that would be the August workshop and August meeting. Is it realistic to?
No, I think that change should be in effect, just be a couple of weeks if, if we were to change that in August. And frankly, the staffing issue and, is still a problem. So we're trying to catch up now, and to add this to it, and we could do it certainly, but my recommendation would be to continue and wait until next year.
Yeah, I mean, if what we've heard is consistency is the issue, to change it again in mid-season, and our parking maps and all of that information, the website is all indicates this, that's a knee-jerk reaction, but we at least acknowledge that there is an issue. We will resolve it next year and possibly look at other issues to resolve with regards to 30-minute meters or what have you. But I would agree with the city manager that changing in the middle, staffing issues and what have you, and enforcement issues, and communicating that properly to all would be a challenge.
I was going to say, we can certainly pursue it and make the effective date for next year, but we can also bundle it with others. So we'll see if maybe we want to do that. Any further questions for Carol?
And I'm assuming you'll be continuing to get feedback.
Oh, I'm sure we will.
So we may have a couple other, we may have more information.
Sure.
By the end of the summer.
Yeah, I'll be happy. We always keep a record of all the complaints we get in what category.
Sounds good. If you don't mind, let's go to the public. Walter, do you have any questions? Nope, he's waving you off. So,
okay.
Thank you very much, Carol.
Mayor, can I just ask a question of
Yeah.
Evan? Are there any logistical or technological challenges with having that one section 2 hours versus 12?
No, all I really would need is about a week in order to do the configuration for the software for the 4 meters, and then also communicate that with Park Mobile. So generally, any software changes, configuration changes like that would take me about a week, maybe a week and a half or two. So.
Okay. And remind us, I know we switched to the 12 hours because the way it was configured last time, people couldn't renew the 4 hours or extend it. Is that true on this? So if someone pays for 1 hour, they cannot extend it past that time?
That's correct, yeah.
Are we able to change that at least?
I would have to look into it. Then you might have the issue, though, of somebody who parks at the 1 hour meter and then just continues to renew it every hour.
Right.
But I would have to look into that a little bit further.
Okay, just a question.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We'll put this on a future agenda when, after we confer with maybe the commissioners or the city manager, see if there's any other parking issues we want to bundle together. Thank you very much. Thank you, Carol. With that, next item is to discuss ordinances to amend Chapter 92, Automobiles, Vehicles, and Traffic of the Municipal Code. There are 2 ordinances proposed, or 2 amendments proposed in front of us. Chief Banks.
Hello, I will try to make this short and brief since we're coming on to the noon hour. The Alderman and the Police Department have identified a need to amend Code 92.1 terms defined and 92240 definitions relating to motorized skateboards or scooters. Currently, it states any device that is designed to travel on at least 2 wheels. Well, that comes problematic with the new designs of the scooter that I have a picture of now that we see around town and out on the boardwalk when we're trying to stop them and say it's not illegal. They're quick to point out that it doesn't have 2 wheels. So the proposed definition would just say may have as few as 1 wheel in the definition that would cover it. So it's just kind of a quick fix to update our regulation. Any questions?
Seems reasonable to me. Are there any questions? Public comment? If not, we'll put this on for consideration at our July voting meeting.
Great, thank
All right?
you.
Thank you, Chief. With that, we'll go to our next item of new business, which is also looking at the same chapter, automobiles, vehicles, and traffic, relative to parking for electric vehicles relating to the location of charging stations and the cost for their use. Evan, is that you?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. So before you is an ordinance to amend Chapter 92, Section 42 relating to parking for electric vehicles. You recall that in the capital budget this year was funds for purchasing 2 electric vehicle charging stations to replace the 2 that were faulty down at the Henlopen condos. So those 2 electric vehicle charging stations are dual port. So there's a total of 4 parking spaces now located at the east side of the convention center parking lot, just south of the water tower there. So essentially just cleaning up the code to reference those 4 parking spaces, the new location, and then also to codify the cost for electric. So in talking with the vendor that we chose for the stations, we think we figured our cost from Delmarva is about 85 cents, I think, per hour. Because in Delaware, they don't charge by, or when trying to calculate the charge, they don't go by kilowatt hour, they go by hour. So they figured our cost is about 85 cents and then an additional 15 cents to cover any fees incurred by that vendor. So a total of $1 per hour to be charged just for the cost of electricity. And that would remain in effect continuously. And with that being said, parking meter fees are still in effect for those spaces, similar to how they had worked down at the Henlopen condos. They just need to visit a meter, pay for parking, and in the off season, they obviously wouldn't pay the meter. So that's all I have, Mayor.
I want to make sure I get this straight. So they're going to park there and hook up. They're going to go to the parking meter and put the tag in there. But to pay for the electric, are they paying the electric meter itself?
They are, yeah. So these stations, they don't accept credit cards or coins or anything like that. It's all basically through a mobile device. So I think the ChargePoint stations, they have their own app. I think they may also use Apple Pay, but it's basically contact free. Just tap your phone and that's how you pay, which I think is pretty common.
Very good, thank you. And I know that the Henlopen location was on some kind of EV apps where
Yes.
people could punch in something and it said, here's your nearest location. Do we have
Right.
that?
So yes, I was actually in contact with, I think it was a federal agency that sort of had their own EV map. I know ChargePoint also does their own map, so I've been in contact with them. They've removed the 2 stations that were pinpointed out, the Henlopen condos, and they've added the 2 here at the convention center. So that was all part of actually setting up the stations, was having them pinpointed, mapped, and put on those maps.
So will that prevent just the average parking person from taking one of those spots?
Yeah, so we, similar to what we had down at the Henlopen condos, we're still working on signage that'll designate those spaces as EV parking only. Again, maximum of 3 hours. We want to encourage turnover. I know there's also been some comments about maybe doing some stamping within the parking spaces themselves. So we can either purchase a stencil or use thermoplastic to indicate those spaces. My recommendation would probably be to use a green paint, only so nobody gets confused with that maybe being an accessible space if they're not looking at it up close.
Evan, when people pay the device, do we get that money, or is that going to the vendor?
So 85 cents of it will come to us
Okay,
to
that's-
sort of cover our cost, and then the 15 cents, roughly 15 cents, will cover the cost that we incur from that vendor.
Got you. And how long does it take for these stations to charge a vehicle? Is it?
I'm not.
Some of the Tesla ones are 7 minutes or something.
Yeah,
like that.
I'm not so sure. I don't know off the top of my head. It is a level 2 charger. They're not the superchargers. I think that some of the Teslas are. But I think 3 hours is plenty enough time to get a decent charge on any vehicle.
Okay. All right, good to know. Thank you.
Any questions? Any questions from the public? If not, thank you very much, Evan. So we will put that, if there's no objection, we'll put that also for consideration and vote at the July regular voting meeting. With that, we've got commissioner announcements and comments. I just really have one that I wanted to share with you, and that I wanted to recognize the RBHA. Is there 100th? 50th anniversary. But in particular, I wanted to point out that at the RBHA's own initiative, at their own cost, at their own designing, at their own marketing, finding places in the town to distribute these. This is a pedestrian and bicycle map, and it's fantastic, and I wanted everybody to know that and to thank them personally. With that, did you have a comment?
I have a comment. It's just something I've been thinking about all week. Last week, I learned something really exciting about our city that I want to share. I got the Rehoboth Beach Main Street newsletter, and it contained an announcement that we have a 0% commercial vacancy rate. This is incredible news, especially in light of what we've experienced in the last 15 months. When we were agonizing over shutdowns this time last year, who would have thought we'd be celebrating this milestone today? In addition to the pandemic restrictions, we learned in the past year that several iconic businesses were moving out of town, including Nicola's and The Pond, and we worried who would be next. But the important part to me was that those businesses didn't shut down. They left town because they outgrew their small space in our small city, and they needed more space, or they wanted to relocate near other properties they own. In other words, they were successful, and they got their start right here in Rehoboth Beach. So while change is hard and we mourn the loss, we should celebrate their success and be proud that it was our town that facilitated their achievements. And now new businesses are here to start the cycle all over again. So I'm glad we've created an environment where small businesses can thrive, and I'm proud of our city today and our management and staff for serving our small businesses and our community, and just look forward to the best July 4th ever.
Thank you, Susan. Any other commissioner comments?
I just want to, I want to thank the city manager and the chief and all of their staff. You know, we're having fireworks on Saturday. That was no easy task, and I want to thank them for their hard work, and glad we get to celebrate with those festivities.
Thank you.
Mayor, a quick update from the General Assembly, particularly because it applies to work that the City Environment Committee has been doing. We all know the General Assembly adjourned a day or so ago. HB 212, which is the single-use plastic bag bill, passed the, excuse me, we're all having voice problems.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a dry air up here or what. HB 212 passed the state Senate on June 29th, and this closes an important loophole in the current plastic bag legislation, which allows plastic bags greater than 2.25 mils thick, and many stores have gone now to giving those out, and so you're finding that you're simply getting a thicker plastic bag as opposed to no plastic bag. That will not be allowed once Governor Carney signs this, which is expected to happen in the next several days. So hopefully that is going to work at stopping kind of the throwaway mentality or mindset that some of the public has. It also will expand the single-use plastic bag ban to all stores. So not only the large ones out on the highway, but also all of our small retail establishments here downtown. So that will be a difference. There will be a movement now in bringing your own bag as you go shopping. All stores that are permitted to give out plastic bags for such things as fresh meat or fresh fish products will have to have a plastic bag recycling bin in their area. On a second item, balloon releases, which is State Bill 24 passed, and balloon releases are now classified as littering, which makes it illegal. Third item, it appears that there will be some new funding sources for recycling grant programs. So Kevin and Evan and others in the city will need to start to pay attention to this. Hopefully, and it looks like these new recycling grant programs will also include recycling of electronic devices, which has been very difficult for the public to find. It's in Senate Concurrent Resolution 56. And lastly, and unfortunately, Senate Bill 134 and 140, which is intended to expand the ban to polystyrene, this product, which is so bad for the environment. It did not pass, but it's still alive. It's likely to come back into the next session. So we need to watch for that and stay tuned. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead, Commissioner LeGree.
Thanks, Commissioner Byrne, for all that you're doing on that. I look forward to the day when I don't see a plastic bag floating in Silver Lake. It'll be a great day. And styrofoam was one of the worst things in this whole world, and getting rid of it is even worse. Thanks, Commissioner Gay, for the good thoughts about our town. I remember watching and listening to folks predict gloom and doom if we didn't change our ways, and by golly, we're doing okay after all. So, and welcome, Madison. Got great stuff, a lot of work for you. We're glad you're here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
I don't want to be Debbie Downer here, but with just an incredible tragedy that occurred in Surfside, Florida recently, I'm just would like to talk with our city manager or some type of information as to what is the city's responsibility here for building inspections, whether that falls to the city, whether that falls to the state, or there is, I know Surfside, Florida has and Miami-Dade has a law, a ruling in place that buildings over 40 years of age must be inspected. And I just don't know if we have a policy on that, but being a community located in a similar situation as Surfside, I would like to be able to have some confidence that there are policies, or at least we look forward to inspections, whether it be with the homeowners associations or the building inspectors or what have you, that we try to get ahead of this situation so tragedies such as that would not occur here. If you could do some research for us to bring us up to date, I would appreciate that.
Certainly.
That's an interesting note, because a lot of people don't know there are high rises here that are concrete, and I always thought, even myself, that concrete's forever product. But many of these in the last decade have actually been denuded of their concrete on the outside, so you could literally look into the living room or bedroom of people, and then it was replaced, all because apparently concrete is like a sponge. And it absorbs water, and then it deteriorates the metal inside, and then you've got big problems. So that appreciate you bringing that up. With that, we'll go on to the review future meeting dates. Our next meeting is a regular meeting, voting meeting, July 16th. I want to let you know, one of the topics that we're going to focus on for quite a bit would be different topics within stormwater management and also lake health issues. So we're going to spend a lot of time getting update on different things, asking questions, and from there be able to set paths forward on discussions in that area. With that, we'll have our final citizen comment off topic. Do you have anything today? Let's.
Walter Birmingham, 123 Hennepin Avenue. In reading the Boardwalk and Beach Committee's report, I see in there that the city's worked out to get some part-time help for the beach patrol. To you all, thank you. I think you're not getting enough credit. We have a new public relations person, and you put out early, I mentioned before, you got help to run the boards of the trash trucks with our drivers, I guess, and equipment, and that was a good job. And I think we should be talking about the fact, the city manager, that you went out, I guess, if I understand it correctly, you have an outside firm coming in at 9 o'clock tomorrow night till 2 o'clock in the morning, or whatever you need to do to help clean up the city. And we ought to be telling the people and putting it out there to the press so that maybe the city gets a little credit for what they're trying to do, but it's an extra big job. I know the lieutenants and the chief, after a while you get enough training to do it, but they do a fantastic job, and I think you should be getting more credit. But sometimes you have to let the people know what's happening. You don't need to keep it so close now, what's necessary to make it work. And I added to mention, my friends at Delaware Power are checking the street lights on the way out of town, especially with the new traffic pattern out there, and the reduced lane sizes have affected the speed which people will be able to leave Rehoboth, because people are being much more careful with the 11-foot lanes. So the town city might not be emptying so quick, but the speed is better. And Traffic Management Center, I'm sure, will keep it green as long as they can out of town. And I'm sure everybody's happy for it.
Thank you, Walter.
Thanks, Walter.
With that, if there's no other comment, we will adjourn this meeting at 12:12 p.m. Thank you very much. Lynn, this is for you. No, who gets the resolution? Do you? Does anybody?
We'll take it.